I went this way. Sorry.
All set? Oh yeah. Yeah. Hey. Yep. All right.
We got
Verified.
exposure. Let me see.
Flagler County Sheriff's deputies are en route to the residence of Dorothy Singer to execute a search warrant. Dorothy has reported her husband, Charles Singer, as missing, yet investigators harbor deep suspicions about the authenticity of her claims. As they approach, the deputies are bracing for what they fear may be a far more unsettling reality, one shrouded in deception and unanswered questions.
You got truck? Door opens out. Outswing.
Brandi County Sheriff's Office, search warrant, open the door! Brandi County Sheriff's Office, search warrant, open the door! Brandi County Sheriff's Office, search warrant, open the door!
Dog.
Show your hands.
Slowly open the door and get control of your dog, okay? Sheriff's Office. Okay.
60-year-old Dorothy Singer found herself at the center of a story so twisted it seemed ripped straight from the pages of a murder mystery novel. For months, Dorothy misled detectives and Charles's family, sending text messages while impersonating her missing husband and continuing to access his bank accounts. All the while, what investigators didn't realize was that Charles had been on the property the entire time, just yards away. What began as a missing persons case would soon unravel into one of the most bizarre and chilling husband and wife murder investigations in recent history. In the quiet rural expanse of Flagler County, Florida, Charles and Dorothy Singer lived in an area where the sound of gunshots or heated arguments often blended into the background of daily life. However, by February 2017, Charles's sister Lori began feeling an unsettling sense of suspicion. Weeks had passed without hearing her brother's voice, and despite her repeated invitations to family gatherings, Dorothy always seemed to have an excuse for why she and Charles couldn't attend. What raised Lori's alarm even further were text messages she received from her brother. Messages that felt unlike him. Charles rarely texted due to his poor eyesight, which was so severe he had been declared legally blind and didn't even have a driver's license. Lori's concerns deepened after a chance encounter at a gas station. An acquaintance of Charles mentioned that the couple had a particularly bad fight, and no one had seen Charles since. Alarmed, Lori's husband, James, filed a missing persons report for Charles. When deputies conducted a welfare check at the Singer's residence, something strange happened. The very next day, Lori received a text from Charles claiming he was fine, a message that only fueled her suspicions. How could Charles have known about the police visit to their home? The property had no cameras, and Dorothy maintained she hadn't heard from him. Detectives decided to question Dorothy about her husband's disappearance. She told them they had argued over his narcotics use and claimed he had left without taking his debit card, leaving her stranded. However, her story unraveled when investigators obtained Charles's bank records. Every transaction on the account appeared to have been made by Dorothy. Surveillance footage confirmed it. Dorothy was seen making ATM withdrawals and purchases herself. When confronted, her explanations were riddled with inconsistencies, each one further eroding her credibility and adding to the growing mystery surrounding Charles's fate.
Oh, and it looks like Social Security went in.
Yeah, so
3-2 for 1091, 1,000.
And then straight talk.
That is the house phone.
Oh, okay.
And it
it comes out every month.
Right, it come out there, and it looked like it come out again today.
Oh, okay.
Or the 3rd, which would have been today.
Okay.
So the Social Security goes in the beginning
On the
of
3rd.
the... Okay, and that just goes in automatically no matter what.
Right there. And here it was less because they took his insurance out.
Oh, okay, so he usually gets 13.
Yeah.
Almost 14.
Well, he was getting 14 something, and then they started taking, the state of Florida don't pay for their insurance no more. So there they took out 3 months.
So how do we? Where's the dates? Oh, I see them over there.
Yeah. All right. So
Next one.
the life insurance.
That's automatically.
And
I
it
didn't
always
even know about that. I was like, what?
Capital One.
That's his credit card.
Okay, that he has with him, right?
Right.
And he has all of his credit cards?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So he made a phone payment on the 10th? What's today? No.
This is 3/10. Today is the 3rd.
Oh, the April.
So he had to call from his phone to make that
Mm-hmm.
payment. Okay. Walmart in Palatka.
I'm assuming that we were just talking about that. He has to be with Brian. That's the only reason he'd be over there.
Suspicious financial activity, coupled with Dorothy's inconsistent statements and defensive behavior, painted a troubling picture. Her unrestricted access to Charles's accounts, the unexplained withdrawals, and her conflicting stories raised red flags that investigators could no longer ignore.
Right here, the aggressive dog is in the car, so just don't open it.
Okay. Alright, good morning, guys. Sorry to wake you up like this.
That's okay.
Is the house completely clear? Okay. Do you guys want to sit on your couch? Inside? Okay, it's cold. Alright, let's go ahead and go inside.
Clear. Watch yourself going up those stairs.
Each new revelation seemed to deepen the suspicion that Dorothy wasn't just a bystander in the mystery, but might be actively hiding something far more sinister. Her evasive actions and questionable explanations turned the spotlight squarely onto her, making her involvement in Charles's disappearance impossible to dismiss. Video footage from inside the Singer home was withheld for confidentiality, but it was during this investigation that Detective Conrad confronted Dorothy about her lies. Phone records irrefutably proved that the text sent from Charles's phone originated from within their home. When pressed for the truth, Dorothy chose to end the conversation by requesting a lawyer. Officers subsequently placed Dorothy and her daughter Amber in patrol vehicles while they continued their search of the property. Detective Conrad had previously been granted permission by Dorothy to explore the property, and during that earlier search, Dorothy's behavior became noticeably anxious and withdrawn. As they approached the wooded area at the back of the property, her unease was palpable. Dorothy repeatedly tried to redirect the detective back to the house, but her attempts only heightened suspicion. Then Conrad's attention was drawn to an area where branches had been carefully arranged to conceal a tarp draped over a John boat. Sensing its significance, the team prioritized searching the spot. What they were about to uncover would finally bring closure to Charles Singer's family, ending months of uncertainty and unearthing the chilling truth behind his disappearance.
The camouflage tarp that was purchased at Ace Hardware on February 10th, 2017, was consistent with the tarp that was covering the suspicious John boat.
Smell mothballs under there too.
I don't want to trample too much.
That's not really an issue.
Oh.
I mean, it is, but it's not.
You guys gonna pull the tarp off?
No, now the plan is we're just gonna lift it just enough. Just
Okay, I'll
confirm.
stand over there.
Yeah, probably go on the other side.
Barney hands.
Because when we start unraveling this, I'd like to, I mean, is documented like what, how secure it is, stuff like that. Let's get there.
What's your plan as far as you're just gonna look under it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just the bare minimum.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's gonna take to.
Thank you. I think we can do the man.
Over there. Kind of open. See what's open over there on the right side.
Yeah, I'm thinking probably remove some brush, peel the pallet back. I'd like to leave the tarp as much just like that as we can, you know.
See the rope? I don't.
I do. Well, we'll peel the pallet back as much as we can, and then just lift the entire boat up. I mean, and if we verify the body's there, and we'll just. What do y'all think?
I did take pretty good photographs of this all the way around when I was out here earlier.
Awesome.
As is.
Great. So you got awesome pictures of the pallet, the
pallet,
bottle, the
everything.
rope, everything.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I went around all sides.
Awesome.
So.
Are we good to go?
Sure.
Okay.
I have tarps if we need them. I have some little shovels and stuff in case you need it.
Awesome.
And extra gloves as well. If you want to, how often you want me to take pictures?
Just pile it somewhere.
The camouflage tarp covering the suspicious John boat bore a chilling connection to Dorothy's activities. Investigators discovered it was identical to a tarp purchased at Ace Hardware on February 10, 2017. This detail not only linked Dorothy to the concealment effort, but also added a critical piece of evidence to the growing case against her, further solidifying suspicions that she had gone to great lengths to hide the truth about Charles Singer's disappearance. Officers, now certain that Charles's remains could be beneath the John boat, proceeded with meticulous care. They carefully removed the strategically placed branches and camouflage tarp, ensuring that the crime scene remained undisturbed. Each step was methodical, driven by the need to preserve any evidence that could provide answers about Charles's disappearance and the events that had unfolded on the property.
Sorry.
Yeah. Watch out. Watch that ball. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Lift right there, and then right here.
One of you got it, and then you want me down and listen?
All set?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Hey.
Yep.
All right.
We got
Verified.
exposure. Let me see.
Yeah. Take a picture of it. Yeah. Hey, Jody.
Okay.
All right, Jody.
There's the mothballs.
Take a picture of the mothballs.
As news of the investigation spread, Dorothy's sister voluntarily turned over a .22 Winchester Magnum rifle that had been in Dorothy's possession for about a year before being returned 2 months prior, around the same time Charles disappeared. Ballistics testing confirmed this rifle was the murder weapon. Adding to the mounting evidence, police were contacted by a confidential informant who agreed to a controlled meeting equipped with an audio recording device. During this meeting, Dorothy revealed her plans to flee the state and stage her own death. In a shocking turn, Dorothy confessed to the informant that she had shot Charles following an argument. She described a struggle during which the gun discharged, striking Charles in the chest. Dorothy claimed she blacked out, and the next thing she remembered was sitting at Charles's head, firing the weapon repeatedly until it clicked empty. When authorities uncovered Charles's body, it was wrapped in a bedding comforter and tarp, secured with white twine around the neck and midsection. The body displayed signs of significant trauma, including a small hole in the skull and a suspected fracture on the left side. Further examination of the property revealed bloodstains on the headboard, carpet, and curtains in the master bedroom, as well as mothball packaging and the camouflage tarp Dorothy had purchased. Charles's wallet was found at the scene, but was missing his EBT and ViStar cards. Dorothy Singer was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder in May 2019, following a 5-day trial. She was sentenced to life in prison, bringing a grim conclusion to a case defined by deception, betrayal, and tragic loss.
You're being charged this morning with first-degree murder with a firearm. Is it your intention to hire a private attorney to represent you today, ma'am?
No.
That was a no?
Yeah.
Okay, then let me ask you some questions about your finances. Are you working?
I was.
Okay, where are you working, ma'am?
Manufacturing.
And how much do you earn?
$400 a week.
Do you own a house or any land?
No.
Do you own a vehicle or a truck?
No.
I will conditionally appoint the public defender's office to represent you today, ma'am. You will need to fill out more detailed financial documentation at your next court date if you wish to continue with their services, okay?
Okay.
All right, I have reviewed the 707 arrest affidavit and the warrant signed by myself. I will find probable cause. State, is it your intention to file the appropriate motion to detain Ms. Singer?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Warren, anything this morning?
No objection as to PC.
Okay.
I anticipate being appointed. I've already been out to see her. And if we do file a bond motion, we'll file that appropriately within the next week or two.
Okay, I'll leave the bond as set at none, and I had also made a note on there, no contact with the victim's family or any witnesses in the case, so I will leave that in place as well. Thank you, Ms. Singer.
Although Dorothy claimed self-defense and some acquaintances reported that Charles and Dorothy had a history of physical altercations, the overwhelming evidence of her lies and deceit ultimately sealed her fate. Her attempts to manipulate the narrative and conceal her actions unraveled under the weight of the investigation, leading to her conviction for first-degree murder. Could Dorothy's claims of self-defense hold any truth, or were they simply another layer of deceit in a carefully constructed web of lies? What drives someone to such extremes of manipulation and violence within a relationship?
Waller County 911.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Rodney Dykes. I need an ambulance and please.
Okay, what's going on?
I have no idea. I'm afraid to ask. I need some help.
Okay, they're en route, sir. Okay?
These emotional words were spoken by Rodney Dykes during a 911 call on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in Waller County, Texas. His voice was filled with worry and sadness, hinting at the seriousness of what had happened.
Blake said her head is somewhere else in the tub. Okay. Okay.
That day, a young woman named ANGYY DIAZ lost her life in a heartbreaking incident. ANGYY was a kind and caring person, known for her warm smile and love for her family and friends.
21-year-old ANGYY DIAZ was described as a happy young woman full of joy. Her coworkers say she was always smiling and a very hard worker.
She was a newlywed, just starting a new chapter in her life, when everything changed.
Portion of a body dismembered and a residence that was covered in blood. It's a gruesome scene at best.
This is Angie's story, a reminder of how precious life is and the importance of taking care of each other. ANGYY DIAZ was a 21-year-old woman with a radiant smile and a kind heart, known for her infectious positivity and unwavering dedication to those she loved. Born and raised in Honduras, ANGYY had recently moved to the United States to start a new chapter in her life. She married Jared DIAZ, a young man from Texas, in what seemed to be the beginning of a promising future together. ANGYY worked tirelessly to support her dreams, holding a job at a local business while embracing her new role as a wife. Her family and friends described her as vibrant, compassionate, and full of life, with aspirations that were as bright as her personality.
Truthfully, I think everyone loved her here at the store. Not just us here at the store, but all the customers. She was good friends with most of the clients.
ANGYY's journey to the United States was fueled by hope and ambition, a determination to build a better future for herself and her loved ones. Known for her warm demeanor and strong work ethic, she quickly made an impression on everyone she met. Despite the challenges of adapting to a new country, ANGYY's resilience and optimism never wavered. She dreamed of pursuing higher education and contributing meaningfully to her community, all while cherishing the close relationships she maintained with her family back home. Her marriage to Jared DIAZ was seen as the next step in her journey, a union that held the promise of love and stability. However, beneath the surface of what appeared to be a fresh start lay struggles and tensions that would ultimately lead to an unthinkable tragedy, cutting short the life of a young woman who had so much ahead of her. On that fateful Tuesday afternoon, Rodney DIAZ made a 911 call that would haunt him for the rest of his life.
Wallace County 911.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Rodney Celenza. I need an ambulance and please.
Okay, what's going on?
I don't know everything, but my son's wife is dead. Please.
Okay.
Phone.
Okay, are you on location right now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I am. Oh my God.
Okay.
I'm here.
Where is he at?
He's in my house.
Okay, this is your house.
They have a building on my property. Oh my God, please.
Okay, and you said this is who to you now?
She's my daughter-in-law. She's my daughter-in-law. God.
Okay, it's a female?
Yes.
Okay, how old is she? Do you see anything by her, close to her?
I just please send somebody. Oh my God, please hurry. There's something wrong with my son. Please hurry.
Okay. I'm getting them in. I'm sorry?
He has no weapons. He's in my house. He's laying on the floor crying. Please hurry.
Okay.
Oh my God, damn it.
His voice was trembling, almost breaking, as he tried to explain the unexplainable. My son's wife is dead. Please hurry. The dispatcher's calm questions did little to steady his panic as he grappled with the unimaginable reality unfolding in front of him. As Rodney struggled to articulate what he had discovered, the weight of his words began to reveal the horror awaiting deputies at the DIAZ property.
Does he have any information?
I have no idea. I'm afraid to ask. I need some help.
Okay, they're en route, sir. Okay. Okay, so your son, you said the female's husband, correct? He was in the hospital a couple days ago?
Yes, ma'am. Sunday night.
Okay. And you said he was hearing things?
He said he was hearing things. Not me, him.
Right.
He was sick.
When law enforcement arrived, they found a scene of chaos and grief.
Sergeant.
I got as far as the doorway. I didn't.
Yeah, don't go in. This is a murder scene. It's an ugly spot.
Rodney, distraught and pale, could barely contain his emotions as he pointed them toward the converted shed where ANGYY DIAZ's body lay. The family's anguish was raw and overwhelming, with members crying and pacing as deputies worked to secure the area. The weight of the tragedy hung heavy in the air.
Where was old redhead?
He was sitting down in this chair right here with his mom.
Did he say anything to you?
He didn't say.
As if the property itself was mourning the loss of the young woman who had brought so much light into their lives. Rodney's anguish was compounded by an unbearable duality. He was not only grieving the violent death of his daughter-in-law, but also grappling with the horrifying realization that his own son might be responsible.
Do you know these folks, Judge? Okay.
The once ordinary father-son relationship was now a source of profound pain, as Rodney struggled to reconcile the image of the boy he had raised with the crime that had shattered their family. "I don't know everything," he told the dispatcher, his voice trembling, "but there's something wrong with my son."
How did it happen? They said that the deceased lady and old boy that's in the back seat of Dion's car got married last September. And all they know is her name is ANGYY, ANGGY. But she works at Cheppy's, or worked at Cheppy's. So if she doesn't have any, I'm thinking, we ain't gone in there. Hopefully she's got there's some ID in there, but they could ID her if there's nothing in there.
The depth of Rodney's devastation became apparent to everyone at the scene. He was a man caught between heartbreak and disbelief, trying to protect his family while cooperating with law enforcement in their pursuit of justice.
We'd like to ask for your consent to go into the house.
Into my house?
Yes.
No.
Okay, without, we're going to get a search warrant.
JR's right there. Right there.
Okay.
What do you need to go in my house for?
Isn't that where the body's at?
No, sir.
No, sir.
It's back house. This
Okay.
is back house. I've got 9 dogs in there.
I apologize. I was told.
No.
I apologize. I
Well,
was
you
told
don't
it
have
was
to
in the
talk to
house.
me and start threatening me with a goddamn search warrant. That's not needed. It's not necessary.
Sir, I was asking for your consent.
And I told you no.
And I was going under the impression that the body was inside the house.
All right.
So
are we good?
You tell me, are we
I
good?
am. I
Okay,
apologize to you.
Can we get your consent to go into the house behind you?
Most definitely can.
Okay,
Of course
thank
you
you
can.
very much.
It's just you can't. I've already been told I can't go in my house, and you're going to go in my house. You're going to have to shoot my goddamn dogs to get in that house, and it's not going to happen.
We're trying to figure out what's going on here.
All right, that's why I'm getting
That's
upset.
all we're doing.
If you want to go in that house, I'll let you in that house, but you've got to send somebody in there with me to secure my dogs. And y'all ain't killing my dogs.
We have no intention of killing your dog.
That's why I'm getting upset.
So we have no intention of causing any more harm here tonight.
Put them in there.
Okay.
No, just
it's a misunderstanding. I apologize to you.
We're
I do.
we're trying to
I'm
get to the
not
bottom of
be
what's going on here.
All right.
That's
You
all
have
we're
my
trying to do.
permission.
So can I get you
His heartbreak reflected the sheer enormity of what had been lost. Not just ANGYY's life, but the innocence and unity of their family, which had been irrevocably destroyed by the unspeakable events of that day. It was a nightmare no parent should ever have to endure, and one he would carry with him forever. Investigators worked swiftly to secure the crime scene, a small converted shed that now bore witness to an unspeakable act of violence. Family members were separated for questioning, their shock and anguish evident in every word and gesture. Inside the shed, evidence told the story of a violent struggle, items strewn about, blood spattered across the walls, and the devastating reality of ANGYY's final moments etched into the surroundings. Her body bore the marks of unimaginable brutality, the kind of savagery that left even seasoned law enforcement professionals shaken to their core. It was clear that ANGYY had suffered greatly, and the sheer ferocity of the crime painted a horrifying picture of what had transpired. As the investigation unfolded, Jared offered no explanation for his actions. He sat in custody, his silence as chilling as the violence he had unleashed. Detectives pieced together the events leading up to the crime, uncovering a series of red flags: Jared's erratic behavior, his recent drug use, and his earlier plea for help, that now seemed to foreshadow the tragedy. Meanwhile, the family, reeling from shock, struggled to comprehend how an ordinary day had spiraled into their worst nightmare. Their grief was palpable, a heavy presence that hung over the scene, underscoring the profound and permanent loss they had suffered. For investigators, the task was not just to determine how the crime had occurred, but to grapple with why it had happened. The evidence told part of the story, But Jared's silence left a void, making his actions all the more incomprehensible. As the pieces came together, one thing became clear. This was a crime that had devastated not just one life, but many, leaving a trail of unanswered questions and heartbreak in its wake. In custody, Jared displayed strange and erratic behavior that baffled investigators. At times, he sat motionless, his head hanging low as though weighed down by the gravity of his actions. At other moments, he paced the room, performed squats, and fidgeted restlessly, as if trying to dispel an invisible force. This behavior hinted at profound anxiety, guilt, or the lingering effects of the drugs he admitted to using. When detectives entered the room to question him, Jared's responses were fragmented and unsettling, marked by a detachment that unnerved even experienced interrogators. "It wasn't me. Something made me do it," he muttered, his voice hollow and devoid of emotion. He claimed that after using methamphetamine, he began hallucinating and hearing voices. According to Jared, the commands came from the television, urging him to kill his wife in what he described as a demonic influence overtaking his mind. His account painted a chilling picture of a man who believed he was no longer in control of his actions. Detectives pressed for details, but his responses were scattered and often contradictory. Jared alternated between moments of apparent lucidity and nonsensical statements, further complicating the already harrowing narrative.
So, it's my understanding you were just in the hospital, is that right?
Yes, after that started feeling weird.
What were you in the hospital for?
Stomach pain.
Okay, and do you know what hospital did you go to?
Despite his attempts to attribute his actions to external forces, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Blood on his clothes, DNA at the scene, and the crime told a story that could not be ignored. While his words revealed a fractured mental state, they did little to explain or excuse the horrific violence that had unfolded in the shed. The confession, though haunting, offered investigators a glimpse into the chaos of Jared's mind as they worked to piece together the events of that fateful night. Following a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation, Jared was deemed competent to stand trial, a decision that drew both scrutiny and relief. Mental health professionals determined that while Jared displayed signs of paranoia and psychosis, he was fully aware of his actions at the time of the crime and understood the consequences. This ruling ensured that he would face the legal repercussions of the horrific act he had committed. Confronted with overwhelming evidence and unable to refute the charges, Jared pleaded guilty to murder, a grim admission that brought little solace to those who mourned Angie. During sentencing, the courtroom was filled with an atmosphere of somber reflection and palpable grief. Angie's family and friends, many holding back tears, listened as the court handed down a 40-year prison sentence, with eligibility for parole in 2043. For Angie's loved ones, the sentence was a stark reminder of the magnitude of their loss. No amount of time behind bars could bring back the young woman whose life was taken so senselessly. Still, the guilty plea spared them the emotional turmoil of a lengthy trial and provided a measure of closure, however small. The community, too, grappled with the senselessness of Angie's death. Vigils were held with neighbors, friends, and strangers, coming together to honor her memory and offer support to her grieving family. Angie's vibrant personality, her dreams, and her kindness became the focus of these gatherings, a collective effort to ensure her life would be remembered for its light rather than its tragic end. For Jared, the sentence marked the beginning of a long period of incarceration in which he would confront the enormity of his actions. The man who once claimed to hear voices controlling him was now left with silence, a silence that would echo in the stark walls of his prison cell for decades to come. While justice was served in the eyes of the law, the wounds left by this tragedy ran deep, leaving scars on a family, a community, and a life forever lost. ANGYY DIAZ was more than just a victim of a heinous crime. She was a young woman full of life, love, and potential. Her smile could light up a room, and her unwavering optimism inspired those around her. ANGYY was the kind of person who made friends effortlessly, her genuine kindness and infectious laughter, leaving a lasting impression on everyone she met. To her family, she was not just a daughter or a sister. She was their heart, a source of strength, and a beacon of hope for the future. ANGYY had dreams that extended far beyond her small corner of the world. She worked tirelessly to build a better life for herself and her loved ones, juggling responsibilities with grace and determination. Her aspirations included pursuing higher education and creating a meaningful, stable future with her husband, dreams that tragically would never be realized. Those who knew her speak of her boundless energy and her desire to make a difference. A reminder of the incredible potential cut short by senseless violence. Her death left a void that can never be filled, a gaping wound in the hearts of those who cherished her. For her family, the loss is profound and unrelenting. The empty seat at the dinner table, the missed birthdays, and the silences where her laughter once rang out are constant reminders of what was taken from them. The community, too, felt the ripple effects of her loss, coming together in collective grief to honor her memory through vigils, tributes, and prayers. Angie's tragic passing is a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating consequences of untreated mental health issues and substance abuse. Her story is a call to action, urging us to address these challenges with compassion and urgency before they spiral into irreparable harm. Though her life was cut short, Angie's legacy endures in the love she shared, the joy she brought, and the memories she left behind. Her family and friends are determined to ensure that her light continues to shine, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. This tragic case underscores the devastating consequences of untreated mental health struggles and substance abuse, reminding us of the fragility of life and the far-reaching impact of unchecked pain. ANGYY DIAZ's life was stolen in a moment of unimaginable violence, a senseless act that ended her bright future and left a community shattered. Jared's future, too, is forever altered, confined now to the stark walls of a prison cell where he must grapple with the weight of his actions and the lives he irrevocably changed. For ANGYY's loved ones, the pain of her loss is a constant, unrelenting presence. Her absence is felt in every quiet moment, in the milestones she will never reach, and in the memories her family will never get to make. Yet ANGYY's memory endures as a beacon of love and joy, a testament to the vibrant life she lived. Her laughter, kindness, and dreams continue to inspire those who knew her, urging them to honor her by cherishing the relationships they hold dear. This case also serves as a stark reminder of the importance of addressing mental health and substance with empathy and urgency. These struggles, if left unchecked, can lead to catastrophic outcomes that affect not only individuals, but entire families and communities. For those battling these issues, help is available, and seeking support can be the first step toward healing and prevention. ANGYY DIAZ's story is both a tragedy and a call to action, a reminder of the importance of early intervention, open conversations, and accessible resources for those in need. Though her life was cut short, her legacy lives on in the hearts of her family and friends, urging us all to strive for a world where such tragedies are prevented and every life is given the opportunity to thrive. If you or someone you know is struggling, reach out. Help is available, and it can make all the difference.
Where's your emergency?
My ex-husband was dating me, and he's following me right now. Stop!
He's hitting the back of your car?
Yes!
The city of Beaumont, Texas, wasn't a place that often made headlines.
I cannot stop it, do not kill me.
It was a city of quiet streets, friendly neighbors, and a sense of familiarity that lulled its residents into believing they were safe. But beneath the surface of one household, a storm had been brewing, a storm that would leave devastation in its wake. Liz Carpio, a 32-year-old single mother, had always been the kind of person who brought light to others' lives. Her laughter was infectious, her kindness unmatched. Yet even those closest to her didn't fully grasp the darkness she was living with. A darkness that was growing, threatening to consume her. In the beginning, Bradley Conning was everything Liz had ever wanted. He was attentive, charismatic, and above all, he made her feel seen. Their relationship began like a fairy tale, with late-night talks, whispered promises, and shared dreams for the future. "Liz, I'll never let anything happen to you," Conning would say, holding her close. At the time, those words felt like a shield, but over time, they began to feel more like a cage. Friends recalled moments that didn't sit right. A sharp look when Liz talked to another man, a hand gripping her arm a little too tightly during an argument. Liz brushed it off. "He just cares a lot," she'd say. But caring quickly turned to controlling. By the time Liz realized the danger, she was already ensnared. Conning's love had turned to obsession, and his anger became his primary language. The signs were there. The slashed tires on her car, the mysterious outages in her home, the constant barrage of messages demanding to know where she was. But the most chilling were the threats, subtle at first, then explicit. "If I can't have you, no one will," Conning hissed during one confrontation. Liz's heart raced, but she stayed calm. "You don't mean that," she whispered, trying to placate him. But deep down, she knew he did. In a desperate move, Liz turned to authorities and friends. She posted on social media, "Stay away from this man. He's dangerous." She spoke to a caseworker, detailing his threats and the fear that had become her constant companion. But no protective order, no intervention came in time. April 29th, 2021, began like any other day. Liz made breakfast for her daughter, her small routines providing comfort amid chaos. She smiled as her daughter ate, silently vowing to keep her safe. But unease crept in. By afternoon, Liz noticed the breaker box had been tampered with again, plunging her home into brief darkness. Her stomach knotted. She knew Conning was nearby, watching, waiting. By evening, neighbors heard raised voices outside Liz's home. "Bradley, stop this! You don't have to do this!" she pleaded, her voice laced with desperation. "It's too late," he said, his tone chilling. A single gunshot shattered the quiet of the neighborhood. Liz fell, her life extinguished in an instant. Conning fled the scene, leaving behind a chilling silence. Liz's daughter, now alone and terrified, was found by neighbors who called the authorities. The small child's cries echoed the heartbreak of a community that had failed to save her mother. Conning fled into the night, leaving chaos and devastation in his wake. The once quiet street was now a cacophony of flashing police lights, hurried voices, and the muffled sobs of onlookers. Within minutes, law enforcement arrived at the scene, the stark red and blue lights casting eerie, flickering shadows on the pavement where Liz lay. EMTs worked frantically to save her, but the grim reality was undeniable. Liz's life had been violently and irreparably taken. Her daughter, caught in the whirlwind of terror, stood frozen in confusion and fear. As officers gently guided her away from the scene, she clutched a small stuffed toy, a fragile reminder of the innocence that had been shattered. Taken into protective custody, the young girl became the center of both sorrow and resolve for the community, a child whose life would now be forever marked by the senseless of that night. The manhunt for Conning began immediately. Police mobilized every available resource, scouring Beaumont for any trace of the fugitive. Officers combed through alleys, wooded areas, and abandoned buildings, following leads and questioning anyone who might have crossed paths with him. The air was tense with urgency, as authorities knew that a desperate man could be capable of even greater harm. The community, shaken and outraged, rallied to support the investigation, with many offering tips and information to aid in Conning's capture. Meanwhile, Conning was on the move, his mind a chaotic mix of panic and despair. Desperate and cornered, he moved aimlessly, his steps guided by an instinct for survival rather than any concrete plan. His attempts to stay hidden grew increasingly futile as law enforcement closed in, narrowing the perimeter with each passing hour. It was the vigilance of a local resident that ultimately led to Conning's capture. The tipster, noticing unusual movement near an abandoned building, alerted police, who descended on the location with precision and caution. Inside, they found Conning hunched in a corner, his expression vacant and his body visibly worn from hours on the run. He didn't resist as officers approached, almost as if surrendering was a foregone conclusion. In his mind, the damage had already been done, and there was no escaping the weight of his actions. Conning's arrest brought a momentary sense of relief to the grieving community, but it was far from the end. For Liz's family, her friends, and the countless others who had come to know her story, the capture of her killer was only the beginning of a long and painful journey toward justice and healing. The courtroom was packed on the day of the trial. Liz's family sat in the front row, their faces a mixture of grief and quiet determination. They wanted justice, not just for Liz, but for her daughter, who would grow up without a mother. Conning's guilty plea came as no surprise. The evidence was overwhelming, the crime undeniable. But the words of Liz's family during the sentencing hearing were what stayed with those in the room. "She was our light," her mother said, her voice breaking, "and you extinguished it. But her memory will live on, stronger than your hate." The judge handed down a sentence of 73 years. For Liz's family, it was a hollow victory. No punishment could bring her back, but they hoped it would keep others safe from the man who had stolen her life. The shock of Liz Carpio's murder left her family reeling in pain and disbelief. In the immediate aftermath, her mother became the rock of the household, though her own heart was broken. She stepped into a role she hadn't anticipated, raising Liz's young daughter in the wake of tragedy. "I had to be strong for her," Liz's mother said in an emotional interview. "Every day I remind her how much her mother loved her, how brave Liz was." Each morning began with a routine that mirrored the life Liz had created for her child. Breakfast at the same table, walks in the same park. But the absence of Liz was palpable. Her laughter no longer filled the home. Her voice no longer reassured her daughter when the world felt too big. For Liz's siblings, the loss was a haunting reminder of the fragility of life. They found themselves questioning every interaction, every missed phone call, every sign they didn't fully recognize. They carried the weight of grief mixed with guilt, a toxic brew that only time and purpose could begin to heal. The tight-knit community of Beaumont, Texas, was no stranger to hardships, but Liz's murder shook them to their core. Neighbors who had seen Liz as a cheerful, hardworking mother struggled to reconcile that image with the horror of her final moments. Within days of her death, a makeshift memorial grew outside her home. Flowers, candles, and handwritten notes covered the sidewalk, a collective expression of sorrow and love for the woman who had touched so many lives. "She was one of the good ones," a neighbor said at the memorial. "She didn't deserve this. No one does." The community's grief soon turned into action. Leaders and residents organized vigils not only to honor Liz, but also to raise awareness about domestic violence. These gatherings were raw and emotional as survivors shared their stories, often for the first time, and pledged to fight for change. Liz's death became a rallying cry for her family and community to demand accountability and systemic reform. Her story shed light on the devastating consequences of ignoring the warning signs of domestic abuse. The local government faced intense pressure to act. Liz's family, backed by advocacy groups, pushed for new policies to protect victims like her. They argued that Liz had done everything right, reporting threats, warning others, and seeking help. Yet the system had failed to act in time. This momentum led to community workshops and training sessions for law enforcement and social workers on identifying and responding to domestic violence threats. Organizations partnered with local shelters to ensure no victim would be turned away due to lack of resources. The pain of Liz's death became the driving force behind the Liz Carpio Foundation, established by her family to honor her memory and protect others from the fate she endured. The foundation's mission was clear: to empower victims of domestic violence through education, advocacy, and support. Within the first year, the foundation had accomplished what many thought impossible. They provided emergency shelter for dozens of families, legal assistance for victims seeking protective orders, and funded therapy sessions for survivors and their children. The foundation also worked with schools to introduce age-appropriate programs, teaching young people about healthy relationships and how to recognize abuse. At its heart, the foundation carried Liz's spirit. "She always put others before herself," her sister said during its launch event. "Through this foundation, she's still doing that." Liz's case sparked broader discussions about the gaps in the legal and social systems meant to protect victims of abuse. State lawmakers introduced legislation to ensure that cases like Liz's wouldn't fall through the cracks again. This included stricter enforcement of restraining orders, increased funding for domestic violence shelters, and mandatory training for law enforcement officers. The legal community debated these changes fiercely. Some argued the reforms were overdue, while others feared they would overburden an already stretched system. But Liz's story remained a potent reminder of the stakes. Her family testified at hearings, recounting her courage and the tragedy that unfolded despite her best efforts to seek help. Liz's young daughter became the most poignant reminder of what was lost and what remained. As she grew, her family worked tirelessly to preserve her mother's memory. They created scrapbooks filled with photos, letters, and mementos of Liz's life. They told her stories about her mother's love, her strength, and her dreams. "She'll always know who her mother was," Liz's mother said, "not as a victim, but as a fighter." Every milestone in the little girl's life carried a bittersweet edge. First words, first steps, first days of school. All moments Liz would never witness, but ones her family celebrated in her honor. They vowed to give her the life Liz had dreamed of, surrounded by love and the knowledge that her mother's story had made a difference. As the years passed, Liz's name became synonymous with resilience and hope. Survivors of domestic violence often credited her story as the push they needed to seek help. The foundation became a beacon for those in crisis, its resources saving lives and offering second chances. On the 5th anniversary of Liz's death, her family hosted a large community event to celebrate her life and the progress made in her name. Survivors shared their journeys, attributing their safety and recovery to the foundation. Among them was a woman who stood with her teenage daughter by her side. "Liz saved me," the woman said, her voice breaking. "Her story gave me the strength to leave when I didn't think I could. Because of her, my daughter still has her mom." Liz Carpio's story is more than a cautionary tale. It's a testament to the power of community, advocacy, and love. Though her life was cut short, her legacy continues to save others. Her name is a reminder to act, to listen, and to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Her family often reflects on the journey they have taken since her passing. "We miss her every day," her sister said, "but we know she's with us in every life we've touched through her story. She didn't die in vain." Liz's daughter, now growing into a young woman, embodies her mother's resilience and strength. "She's got her mom's spirit," Liz's mother said, "and I see Liz in her every time she smiles." Liz Carpio's life was a testament to love, resilience, and courage, a reflection of the strength it takes to protect what matters most, even in the face of unimaginable fear. Her tragic death was not just the loss of a beloved mother, daughter, and sister. It was a reminder of the urgent need to address the pervasive issue of domestic violence, which often hides in plain sight. Liz's story underscores a harsh truth. Even those who cry out for help, who do everything within their power to protect themselves, can still be let down by the systems meant to shield them. Her death highlighted gaps in the law, missteps in enforcement, and the devastating cost of a societal complacency. But her story did not end with her death. In the days, months, and years that followed, Liz's name became a rallying cry for change. She became a symbol of what must never happen again. Her memory a spark that ignited a movement within her community and beyond. Liz's legacy is seen not just in the lives of those who knew her, but in the lives she continues to save. Through the work of the Liz Carpio Foundation, countless victims of domestic violence have found the resources, shelter, and hope they need to escape their circumstances. Liz's story has empowered survivors to speak out, spurred families and friends to recognize the warning signs, and pushed communities to act before it's too late. Her face, her voice, her memory. These are etched into the collective conscience of a community determined to ensure that her death was not in vain. Candlelight vigils still mark the anniversary of her passing, not as a grim reminder of what was lost, but as a celebration of what has been achieved in her name. Liz Carpio's story is more than a cautionary tale. It's a call to action. It urges us to listen to the cries of those in danger, to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves, and to challenge the systems that allow abusers to manipulate, threaten, and destroy. Liz's journey was a heartbreaking testament to the silent battles faced by countless victims of domestic violence, often behind closed doors, and the devastating consequences of inaction. Her tragic case sheds light on the cracks within systems meant to protect victims, showing how even a bright and resilient woman like Liz could become ensnared in the web of abuse. Despite her efforts to shield herself and her children, the system's inability to respond adequately to her plight left her vulnerable. Liz had reached out for help, sought refuge, and even confided in trusted individuals about the escalating danger she faced. Yet the lack of timely intervention allowed the darkness she feared most to consume her. It's a call for individuals to step up. Neighbors, friends, colleagues, anyone who notices the subtle signs of abuse. Liz's friends later recounted noticing changes in her behavior, her growing isolation, her reluctance to share details about her life, and the visible signs of stress she could no longer hide. It's these moments that remind us of the power we hold to intervene, to ask questions, to extend a hand before it's too late. It's a call for institutions to do better, law enforcement, social services, and policymakers, to prioritize the safety and well-being of victims above all else. The tragedy of Liz Carpio underscores the importance of creating robust support networks, timely responses to cries for help, and legal systems that hold abusers accountable without placing the burden of proof entirely on the victims. And it's a call for society to stop looking the other way, to refuse to accept domestic violence as someone else's problem. The normalization of keeping family matters private or avoiding involvement only perpetuates cycles of abuse. Liz's case serves as a rallying cry to dismantle these cultural norms, to educate communities on recognizing abuse, and to empower victims to come forward without fear of judgment or reprisal. Liz's story is a sobering reminder that domestic violence is not a private issue. It's a public crisis, and every life lost is a collective failure. Her life, though tragically cut short, has become a beacon of hope for others, a powerful reminder that change is possible and that silence is not an option. Her memory stands as a symbol of the strength she displayed even in her darkest moments, and a testament to the enduring need for systemic and societal change to ensure that no one else suffers the same fate. Perhaps the most profound part of Liz's legacy lies in the resilience of her daughter, a young girl growing up with the love, support, and guidance of a family determined to honor her mother's memory. While her mother's life was tragically cut short, her spirit continues to live on in the strength and determination of the child she left behind. Liz's daughter symbolizes not just the pain of what was lost, but the hope of what still remains and the possibility of a brighter future forged through resilience and love. She's her mother's legacy, Liz's mother often says, her voice filled with both pride and sorrow. Every time she smiles, I see Liz. Every time she reaches for a dream, I see Liz. And every time she stands up for herself, I know Liz's spirit lives on. Those words echo the enduring connection between Liz and her daughter, a bond that transcends even the most unimaginable loss.
Hello? Hey, Miss Hernandez?
Yes.
Hey, I wanted to let you know we have him.
Oh, thanks God. Really, you have it for sure?
Yes, we have him for sure.
Don't let him go. Please don't let him go anymore. Please. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Liz's daughter will grow up surrounded by stories of her mother's courage, selflessness, and unyielding love. Family members make sure to share not only the details of Liz's strength in the face of adversity, but also the moments of joy and laughter that defined her life. These stories serve as a foundation for the young girl's understanding of her mother, shaping her identity and nurturing her own courage and empathy. Knowing the sacrifices her mother made and the battles she fought, Liz's daughter is being raised with the values her mother cherished most: kindness, resilience, and an unwavering belief in standing up for what's right. She will carry the lessons of Liz's life in her own, channeling the love and strength her mother demonstrated into her own dreams and aspirations. Though her journey is forever marked by the loss of her mother, it will also be one of triumph and purpose. Liz's family ensures she grows up with the tools to navigate life's challenges, encouraging her to embrace her mother's legacy, not as a burden, but as a source of pride and inspiration. In her eyes, Liz's fight was not in vain. It was a fight that paved the way for a life of possibility and promise for her daughter. As she grows older, Liz's daughter will continue to honor her mother, not just through remembrance but through action, by living a life rooted in strength, compassion, and hope. She stands as a living testament to Liz's enduring legacy, a beacon of light that shines through the darkness of tragedy, carrying forward the story of a mother whose love remains eternal. Liz Carpio's story is not one that fades with time. It is retold in classrooms, in shelters, and at vigils. It is shared by survivors who found the strength to leave, inspired by her courage. It is woven into the fabric of a movement determined to eradicate domestic violence, one life at a time. In her name, laws have been strengthened, awareness has been raised, and countless lives have been saved. Liz's story reminds us of the transformative power of memory, not just to mourn, but to mobilize, not just to grieve, but to grow. She is more than a victim. She is a catalyst for change, a symbol of resilience, and a reminder of the power of community to create a better, safer world. Liz Carpio's light was extinguished far too soon, but its glow lingers, illuminating the path forward. Her story challenges us to see beyond the surface, to act decisively when we witness injustice, and to hold space for those who need help. It's a story of heartbreak, but also of hope, a testament to the idea that even in the darkest moments, love and resilience can spark a movement. Her family, her friends, and her community carry her memory forward, not in sorrow, but in action. Liz Carpio's name will forever stand as a reminder that one life, even in its absence, can inspire a legacy of compassion, strength, and unwavering determination to create a safer, more just world.
She's not back yet? You mind if we take a look in her bedroom?
Has she ever disappeared before? She doesn't even know. She doesn't not text me when I text her.
What does she normally take with her when she leaves?
Her bag, her phone.
Her phone's not in here.
Not that I found.
I'm going to talk to you about the mom around. Arguing here last night, or I mean the night before, anything, any reason she would leave? No. Okay. Because the rumor going around, people telling us that she was afraid to come home.
This is the moment Andy McCauley realized the police were closing in. Just hours earlier, Riley Crossman, a bright and spirited 15-year-old, went eerily silent. When her worried family contacted authorities, the initial investigation seemed routine. Her bedroom appeared to be nothing more than the typical chaos of a teenager's life, cluttered but unremarkable. However, as officers dug deeper into the room, the narrative shifted. Items a teenager might take if planning to run away were still there, untouched. Then the discovery no one wanted to make. Traces of blood on Riley's bedsheets and more on her comforter. What started as a missing persons case had taken a dark and sinister turn. The question was no longer where Riley was, but what had happened to her. Riley entered the world on December 22, 2003, in the charming town of Martinsburg, West Virginia. Nestled in the northeastern corner of the state, this close-knit community of 20,000 residents boasts picturesque surroundings and a small-town charm that feels like a step back in time. Just a short drive from bustling metropolitan areas like Maryland, Virginia, and Washington, D.C., Martinsburg offered Riley a tranquil yet accessible upbringing. With its low cost of living, tight-knit community, and a sense of safety, it was the kind of place where families could thrive and children could grow up surrounded by the warmth of familiarity and belonging. Riley shared a close bond with her siblings, especially her younger sister Jade, and older brothers Ryder and Parker. Though her childhood was mostly quiet, her parents' divorce deeply affected her and her siblings, strengthening their bond as they coped together. After the separation, Riley and her siblings regularly visited their father in Martinsburg, but lived with their mother Chantel in Berkeley Springs, about 25 miles away. Their household dynamic changed further when Chantel's boyfriend, Andy McCauley, eventually moved in with them. Riley was often described by friends and family as caring, reliable, creative, and a bit stubborn. Despite her strong will, she had an innocence and naivety that set her apart from many girls her age. With a wide circle of friends, an active social life, and outstanding academic achievements, Riley seemed destined for a bright future. By 2018, her happiness grew even more when she met Hayden Lacey, her future boyfriend. The two hit it off instantly, quickly forming a close bond. They met each other's families, attended school dances together at Berkeley Springs High, and stayed connected through endless chats, texts, and FaceTime calls whenever they were apart. For the residents of Berkeley Springs, Tuesday, May 7, 2019, began like any other day. The weather was warm, hinting at summer's arrival, and Riley had a typical day at school. When she returned home just after 3 p.m., her mother, Chantel, was asleep on the sofa, exhausted from juggling 2 jobs and not feeling well. Riley, considerate as always, let her mom rest, but eventually woke her up to ensure she wouldn't be late for her evening shift. After Chantel left for work, Riley spent her evening with her brothers, grandmother Debbie and Andy McCauley. When her grandmother left around 7:30 p.m., Riley went to her room to FaceTime with Hayden. However, their conversation quickly turned into an argument. Riley was upset about Hayden's upcoming school trip to Washington, D.C., worried he might get too friendly with his classmates. By 10 p.m., Hayden had fallen asleep, but Riley sent him a chilling message at 11:01 p.m. "Andy's in my room. Shh, don't say anything about it so he can hear everything." Just 12 minutes later, she sent another and final message. "I'm scared, babe." When Chantel returned home from work that night, she noticed Riley's bedroom door was closed. Assuming her daughter was either asleep or texting Hayden, she decided not to disturb her. What exactly transpired between 11:01 p.m. that night and the following morning remains a mystery. However, when Hayden woke up at 5 a.m. on Wednesday, May 8th, he was startled to find a missed FaceTime call from Riley, sent during the late hours of the previous night. Around 7:15 a.m., Chantel went to check on Riley but found her room empty. She wasn't anywhere in the house either. Riley didn't usually leave for school that early, but Chantel wasn't alarmed. Knowing about Hayden's class trip, she assumed Riley had walked to school early to see him before his departure. Nothing in Riley's bedroom appeared unusual, but Chantel did notice that Riley hadn't taken her purse, glasses, or phone charger, items she never left home without. While this seemed odd, it didn't raise immediate concerns. The day carried on as usual, with everyone expecting to see Riley home by 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon. But when she didn't return, her grandmother began to worry, sensing something was wrong. Chantel tried calling and texting Riley multiple times, but every attempt went straight to voicemail, and her messages remained unanswered. This was immediately alarming. Like most teenagers, Riley was rarely without her phone and always quick to respond to calls or texts. Moreover, she made it a point to inform her mother or grandmother if she planned to be late. As the worry set in, Chantel began piecing things together and realized she hadn't actually seen Riley the night before. She had checked on her sometime after 10 p.m., but the closed door had stopped her from going in, respecting her daughter's privacy. The realization deepened her concern. Something felt undeniably wrong. Andy's behavior took an unsettling turn when Chantel informed him that Riley was missing. Though he said he would help look for her, his actions raised suspicion. Chantel immediately drove to Berkeley Springs High School, just a few blocks away, only to discover the chilling truth. Riley had never made it to school that day. Horrified, she rushed back home, where Andy soon left on his bicycle, claiming he was going to search for Riley. However, when Chantel returned home later, she found Andy asleep on the couch instead of out looking for her missing daughter. Frustration and panic gripped Chantel. Her instincts told her that something was terribly wrong. Desperate for answers, she contacted Riley's boyfriend, Hayden, hoping he might know where she was. To her dismay, Hayden revealed he hadn't talked to, texted, or seen Riley all day. Overwhelmed with fear, Chantel knew it was time to act. Without wasting another moment, she called 911 and reported her daughter missing. When teenagers go missing, police often react cautiously, as many cases involve runaways who return home within a day or two. But this was different. According to Riley's father, Lance, and everyone who knew her, disappearing without a word was completely out of character. Riley was thoughtful and responsible, the kind of person who wouldn't leave her friends and family worried unnecessarily. At just 15 years old and unable to drive, the possibility of her vanishing intentionally seemed remote. The grim reality was that something had happened, whether an accident or something far worse. As officers began their investigation, they searched the area around Riley's school and home, questioning family members for clues. They also reached out to her friends, hoping to piece together her last known movements. To their surprise, at least one friend mentioned a chilling possibility. Riley may not have come home because she was afraid of Andy McCauley. This revelation shifted the focus of the investigation, raising even more questions about what had happened to her. Investigators quickly turned their attention to Andy McCauley. They were well aware of his troubling past, an addict with a lengthy criminal record that included charges for drug offenses, burglary, and assault spanning nearly a decade. With such a history, Andy became a person of interest in Riley's disappearance almost immediately. When officers arrived at the home to question Andy McCauley, he appeared helpful and cooperative, answering their routine inquiries without resistance. Meanwhile, the community sprang into action, with scores of concerned residents joining the search for Riley. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, the Morgan County Sheriff's Office wasted no time in notifying law enforcement agencies in neighboring Maryland and Virginia. Knowing that kidnappers often cross state lines, federal agencies, including the FBI, ATF, and the Department of Homeland Security, were also brought in to assist, leveraging their extensive resources and expertise in handling complex missing persons cases. When officers revealed the chilling text messages Riley had sent to Hayden the night before, Chantel made a shocking suggestion that Andy may have entered Riley's room and assaulted her. It's unclear why Chantel made this claim, or if Andy had previously displayed inappropriate behavior toward Riley. Nevertheless, this revelation cast an even darker shadow over the investigation. Andy was questioned multiple times at the home during the early stages of the case, each session probing deeper into his potential involvement. Investigators even showed him the text messages Riley had sent to Hayden, hoping to gauge his reaction and uncover any inconsistencies in his story. Despite his cooperative facade, the unsettling possibility of his involvement couldn't be ignored. Andy initially appeared cooperative, even volunteering to take a polygraph test. Since he wasn't under arrest, he went to the station willingly. However, the test results came back inconclusive. Andy was under the influence of drugs at the time. Later, he faced further questioning by officers from the Morgan County Sheriff's Office and the West Virginia State Police. During his interview, Andy claimed he had been asleep throughout the night of May 7th and into the early morning of May 8th. However, this alibi was quickly called into question when phone records revealed he had sent nearly a dozen text messages to a friend around 2:30 a.m. Confronted with this evidence, Andy admitted he had left the house on foot that night. He explained that he was experiencing severe withdrawal symptoms and had gone out to buy drugs, claiming he felt horrible and desperate to ease his discomfort. This admission only deepened investigators' suspicions. Andy told investigators he woke up around 4 a.m. on May 8th and left for work about an hour later. As a construction worker for a local company, he claimed to have spent the entire day at a job site in the Red Hill subdivision. However, this account was soon contradicted by his employer, who revealed that Andy had asked for 3 heavy-duty trash bags that morning, saying he needed to clean up another job site. When Andy returned 4 to 5 hours later, his boss noticed his shoes were untied and his clothes were disheveled, as if he had dressed in a rush. Adding to the inconsistencies, investigators obtained CCTV footage showing Andy leaving the job site in his green truck and driving along multiple roads. Some of these roads, including the Tuscarora Pike, were not between the Red Hill subdivision and the other locations he claimed to have visited. Initially, Andy denied being on the Tuscarora Pike, but when confronted with the footage, he reluctantly admitted to lying yet again. His excuse? He claimed he had gone to buy drugs and didn't want to incriminate himself. However, this explanation fell apart when a co-worker informed investigators that Andy already had cocaine with him that day, making it unnecessary for him to purchase more. With a gaping 4 to 5 hour window unaccounted for, investigators strongly suspected that Andy's activities during that time were directly connected to Riley's disappearance. Morgan County Sheriff Corporal Luke Shambaugh revealed that Andy had lied about nearly everything and repeatedly changed his story, raising even more suspicion. Investigators were unanimous. Andy was somehow involved in Riley's disappearance. The challenge now was to prove it, and if possible, locate Riley before it was too late. When saliva and DNA matching Riley's were found on a pillow in her bedroom, the fear that she might already be dead began to set in. As the days passed with no sign of Riley, even her most optimistic friends and family members started to lose hope. Then, 8 days after Riley vanished, their worst fears were tragically confirmed. On Saturday, May 16, 2019, a devastating discovery was made. A body wrapped in heavy-duty black trash bags was found along an embankment of Tuscarora Pike, approximately 25 miles, 40 kilometers, southeast of Riley's home in Berkeley Springs. Due to the advanced state of decomposition, immediate identification was impossible, but investigators were certain the remains belonged to a young woman or teenage girl. The victim's T-shirt was bunched around her neck and shoulders, and she was wearing torn, partially unzipped denim shorts. Oddly, her underwear had been pulled unnaturally high, as if someone else had dressed her. A chalky white substance was found on her shoes, and screws were scattered at the scene. Although investigators strongly suspected the body was Riley's, they refrained from informing her parents until positive identification could be made. However, they shared the discovery with Andy McCauley, now their prime suspect, to gauge his reaction. Upon hearing about the body near Tuscarora Pike, Andy became visibly flustered, asking if investigators knew who it was. When told the body had not been identified, he replied, "I hope it's not Riley. She was like a daughter to me, and I loved her." The following day, the body was sent to the office of the chief medical examiner in Charleston, West Virginia, where dental records confirmed the devastating truth. It was Riley Crossman. Though the advanced decomposition prevented the examiner from determining an exact cause of death, the case was officially ruled a homicide. Investigators continued piecing together the evidence. The white substance on Riley's shoes was identified as commercial drywall mud, and screws similar to those found at the scene were located in Andy's truck and tool belt. With a growing mountain of incriminating evidence, it became clear that Andy McCauley was deeply entangled in the tragic death of Riley Crossman. Investigators concluded that on May 7, 2019, Andy McCauley entered Riley's room while she was lying face down on her bed and either strangled or smothered her with a pillow. They suspected his motive was, though the medical examiner found no evidence to confirm this. However, Riley's mother, Chantel, had previously informed investigators that Andy might have entered her room intending to assault her and that he could become aggressive when under the influence of drugs. On May 16, 2019, the same day Riley's body was identified, police arrested Andy McCauley and charged him with her murder. For the small, tight-knit community of Morgan County, this was an unprecedented and horrifying crime. Prosecutor Dan James noted that the area, while no stranger to crime, had never encountered anything as chilling as Riley's murder. After more than 2 years, Andy's trial began on September 27, 2021. The courtroom was packed with people, emotions running high as the community sought justice for Riley. Among those present were family members, friends, and circuit court officials, all grappling with the weight of a case that had shaken their town to its core. Judge Deborah McLaughlin presided over the courtroom, filled with Riley's parents, friends, relatives, members of the press, local and federal law enforcement officials, prosecutor Dan James, the jury, and the defendant Andy McCauley, accompanied by his attorney, Andrew Arnold. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Andy's plea of not guilty came as a shock to many. In cases like this, defense attorneys often advise their clients to plead guilty and seek leniency from the court or negotiate reduced charges for a lighter sentence. But Andy chose to take his chances in court. State prosecutor Dan James opened the trial with a compelling overview of the crime, detailing how the tragic events unfolded. He meticulously laid out the evidence against Andy, painting a clear picture of his guilt. In a particularly gut-wrenching moment, James rhetorically questioned why Riley's shorts and underwear were torn. Although it was never conclusively proven that Riley had been assaulted, the pointed question reminded the jury of the horrific nature of the crime and the unimaginable suffering Riley endured. The prosecution's powerful narrative set the tone for a trial that would expose every disturbing detail of the case. When Riley's mother took the stand, she delivered a calm and measured account of the events surrounding her daughter's disappearance. Her demeanor was sober, almost emotionless, as she recounted the harrowing details, a reflection of the immense grief and trauma she had endured. Her testimony painted a vivid picture of the days leading up to Riley's disappearance and the devastating aftermath. Following her, Dr. Piotr Kubicek from the Office of the Medical Examiner provided expert testimony about the condition of Riley's body and the results of the autopsy. He described the advanced state of decomposition, the challenges it posed to determining an exact cause of death, and the evidence, or lack thereof, regarding any potential assault. His testimony underscored the tragic nature of Riley's final moments, further strengthening the prosecution's case against Andy McCauley. Dr. Piotr Kubicek testified that Riley's shorts were found unzipped and unbuttoned, with her underwear partially torn. This disturbing detail added to the already grim evidence, suggesting the possibility of a struggle or an attempted assault. His testimony reinforced the horrific nature of the crime and left the jury with a chilling impression of what Riley may have endured in her final moments. West Virginia State Police Sergeant Sean Wolf provided further unsettling details during his testimony. He noted that Riley's shorts and underwear were hiked up unnaturally high, far beyond what would be considered normal, with a portion of her genitals exposed. This observation added a deeply disturbing layer to the case, raising questions about the circumstances surrounding her death and emphasizing the heinous nature of the crime. Sergeant Sean Wolf also testified that strangulation and suffocation could not be ruled out as causes of Riley's death, despite the medical examiner's inability to determine an exact cause. However, this statement was later stricken from the record, as Wolf was not qualified to make such a determination. Nonetheless, his words left a vivid and horrifying impression on the jurors and others in the courtroom, underscoring the crime. Later, forensic experts testified that the drywall mud and screws found with Riley's body matched those in Andy McCauley's truck and tool belt, further tying him to the crime scene. Another key witness, Howard Rourke, Andy's former boss, provided damning testimony. He recounted how Andy had asked for heavy-duty trash bags on the morning of May 8th, left the job site for 4 to 5 hours, and returned with untied shoes and disheveled clothing, as if he had hurriedly dressed. His observations added significant weight to the prosecution's case, painting a picture of Andy's suspicious behavior on the day Riley went missing. During the week-long trial, prosecutors meticulously presented over 120 pieces of evidence, building a compelling case against Andy McCauley. Among the evidence was CCTV footage showing Andy driving along Tuscarora Pike on May 8th, the same area where Riley's body was later discovered. This footage placed him in the vicinity at a critical time, further tying him to the crime. In his closing arguments, prosecutor Dan James emphasized that the murder was not a spontaneous act, but a premeditated crime. He highlighted the calculated steps Andy had taken, including his suspicious actions on the day Riley disappeared and the subsequent attempts to cover his tracks. James urged the jury to consider the overwhelming evidence and deliver justice for Riley. In his closing arguments, prosecutor Dan James delivered a chilling reminder to the jury of how long it takes for someone to die from suffocation or strangulation. He emphasized that during those agonizing moments, the killer would have had ample time to stop but chose not to, underscoring the deliberate and cruel nature of the act. As the trial drew to a close, the jurors were instructed on their responsibilities, including an important decision. If they found Andy guilty of first-degree murder, they would have the option of attaching mercy to his sentence. This meant the difference between the possibility of parole after serving a minimum term or a sentence without any chance of release. The weight of this choice loomed heavily over the courtroom as the jury prepared to deliberate. If mercy was attached to Andy's sentence, it would mean he could become eligible for parole in just 15 years. However, before the jury left the courtroom to deliberate on this critical decision, Riley's father, Lance, took the stand. His testimony was raw and emotional, giving a voice to the profound grief and loss felt by Riley's family. Lance's words were a heartfelt plea for justice, urging the jury to consider the lasting impact of Andy's actions on their lives as they weighed the question of mercy. Andy's defense attorneys worked diligently to clarify the implications of attaching mercy to his sentence. They emphasized to the jury that granting mercy did not guarantee Andy's release in 15 years. Instead, it would simply allow a parole board to review his case at that time. The decision to grant parole would depend on a thorough evaluation of his behavior, rehabilitation, and other factors. This argument aimed to soften the jury's perspective, portraying mercy as a measured option rather than an automatic path to freedom. After deliberating for less than 20 minutes, the jury returned with their verdict. Andy McCauley was found guilty of first-degree murder, death of a child by a custodian through child abuse, and concealing a body. The swift decision reflected the overwhelming evidence presented during the trial, leaving no doubt in the jurors' minds about Andy's guilt in the tragic and horrifying death of Riley Crossman. Unsurprisingly, the jury voted unanimously not to attach mercy to the verdict. As a result, Judge Deborah McLaughlin sentenced Andy McCauley to life without the possibility of parole on November 4, 2021. Andy remained stoic during the sentencing, refusing to make any statement as the final decision was read. After the trial, Riley's mother, Chantel, prosecutor Dan James, and several officers and investigators who had worked tirelessly on the case expressed their disappointment that the death penalty was not an option under West Virginia law. They believed the severity and heinous nature of the crime warranted the harshest possible punishment. Andy McCauley is now serving his life sentence at the Mount Olive Correctional Complex in South Central West Virginia, where he will remain for the rest of his days. What do you think motivated Andy McCauley to commit such a horrific act, and do you believe justice was truly served in this case? Should the death penalty be an option for cases as horrifying as this one, even in states where it's not currently allowed? Thank you for watching this deep dive into the tragic case of Riley Crossman. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the case, so be sure to share your answers to the questions in the comments below. If you found this video compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on our latest true crime stories. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video. Today we explore the incredible journey of Josephine Wenzel, a mother whose determination and resilience brought justice for her daughter after years of pain and uncertainty. This is the story of Krystal Mitchell. On June 10, 2016, a sunny weekend in San Diego turned into an unimaginable nightmare for 30-year-old Krystal Mitchell. What began as a brief getaway with her boyfriend Raymond McLeod ended in tragedy. CCTV footage from that day shows Krystal in a parking lot, glancing nervously over her shoulder, seemingly aware of impending danger. Hours later, her lifeless body was discovered in a condo, brutally strangled. The severity of the attack left fractures in her neck, pointing to the violent nature of her death. Investigators quickly identified McLeod as the prime suspect. A former Marine with a history of domestic violence, McLeod fled the scene, abandoning Krystal's car at the airport before vanishing across the Mexican border. Thus began a desperate, years-long manhunt to bring him to justice, a mission that would test the limits of law enforcement and the resilience of Krystal's family. Krystal Mitchell was a woman filled with boundless energy and a love for life. A devoted mother to 2 young children, she was known for her radiant smile and her ability to make everyone around her feel special. Friends and family remember her as a strong and independent woman, determined to create a better future for herself and her kids after a challenging divorce. Her decision to move from Vancouver, Washington to Phoenix, Arizona marked a fresh start, one filled with hope and promise. But her encounter with Raymond McLeod changed everything. Charismatic and seemingly caring, McLeod quickly charmed his way into Krystal's life. What she didn't know was that behind his charm lay a dangerous and volatile man. Her tragic death would later reveal the true extent of his violent tendencies, leaving her family and community shattered.
So before Krystal put the kids in the plane, she took them to Build-A-Bear and she made them special stuff and she put her voice in it.
The discovery of Krystal's body painted a gruesome picture of the violence she endured. The condo where she and McLeod had been staying showed clear signs of a struggle. Blood trails, overturned furniture, and other evidence spoke to the brutality of the attack. The autopsy confirmed she had been strangled with such force that her neck was fractured, a level of violence consistent with the use of bare hands. This horrifying crime scene left no doubt in the minds of investigators that McLeod was responsible. Despite his initial claims of innocence, his sudden disappearance only solidified their suspicions. For Krystal's family, the aftermath was a blur of grief and unanswered questions. How could someone they had welcomed into their lives commit such a heinous act? For her mother, Josephine Wenzel, this was more than a crime. It was a call to action. When Josephine Wenzel received the devastating call about her daughter Krystal's death, her world shattered in an instant. Krystal was her only daughter, her pride and the light of her life. The pain was overwhelming, and for a moment, it felt like everything had stopped. But as she faced the unimaginable reality of losing Krystal, Josephine knew she had a choice. She could succumb to her grief, or she could transform it into something meaningful. Her resolve to ensure justice for her daughter was born in those early moments of heartbreak. Josephine promised herself and her family that she would not rest until the man who took Krystal's life was held accountable. Josephine was no stranger to solving complex cases. As a retired police detective from Guam, she had spent years uncovering truths and piecing together evidence. But this case was different. It was deeply personal. The stakes were higher than ever. While the pain of losing her daughter was still raw, Josephine channeled her grief into a relentless determination to bring Raymond McLeod to justice. She transformed her home into a command center, dedicating every waking moment to investigating the man who had taken everything from her family. Her dining room became a war room. Maps of Central America, photographs of McLeod, and detailed notes covered the walls. She meticulously documented every lead, connecting the dots and forming a clearer picture of where McLeod might be. With a detective's instincts and a mother's love driving her, Josephine pored over online records, reached out to former colleagues, and scoured social media for any trace of the fugitive. Each new piece of information brought her closer to her goal. No detail was too small, no lead too insignificant to pursue. Josephine's mission was not just about her daughter. It was about preventing others from suffering the same fate. She knew that McLeod's history of violence meant that other women could be in danger. This knowledge fueled her determination, giving her purpose even in the darkest moments. She refused to let Krystal become just another statistic, another name in a long list of victims. By pursuing McLeod, Josephine was sending a message. Justice matters, and no one is above accountability. Her investigation extended far beyond what most people could manage. Josephine immersed herself in the details, learning about geofencing technology and using online tools to track McLeod's digital footprints. She reached out to bloggers, influencers, and even private investigators, leaving no stone unturned. She knew that the traditional justice system had its limits, and if she wanted to find McLeod, she would have to think outside the box. Her efforts were fueled by a mix of professional skill and personal passion, a combination that made her unstoppable. Balancing her mission with her role as a caregiver was one of the greatest challenges Josephine faced. Krystal's young children now relied on her for love and stability. While she dedicated herself to tracking McLeod, she also made sure that the children felt supported and cared for. Josephine found ways to keep Krystal's memory alive for them, sharing stories, photos, and keepsakes that reminded them of their mother's love. Even in the midst of her own pain, Josephine prioritized the well-being of her grandchildren, giving them the comfort and stability they needed to heal. Josephine's efforts soon caught the attention of law enforcement and media outlets. As the story gained traction, more people joined her cause, offering tips and resources. Josephine's unique position as both a grieving mother and a skilled detective made her a compelling figure, and her unwavering resolve inspired others to take action. With each passing day, she became more than just a mother on a mission. She became a symbol of resilience and determination. Through her grief, Josephine found purpose. Her journey was not an easy one, but her love for Krystal and her determination to see justice served carried her forward. Every moment spent investigating McLeod, every late night poring over evidence, and every small breakthrough brought her closer to honoring her daughter's memory. What began as a personal quest for closure evolved into a larger fight for justice, a mission that would inspire countless others and leave an indelible mark on those who followed her story. For Josephine, grief was not the end. It was the beginning of a powerful journey to bring light to the darkness. As Josephine's relentless efforts continued, Krystal's case began to garner national attention. News outlets picked up the story, with headlines like, "Mother Hunts Daughter's Killer," capturing public interest. The FBI and U.S. Marshals joined the hunt, placing McLeod on their most wanted lists. Leads began to emerge, placing him in various Central American countries, including Mexico, Guatemala, and El Salvador. Tracking McLeod, however, proved to be a daunting task. Josephine turned to innovative methods, including geofencing technology, to locate his digital footprint. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when Josephine discovered a blog post and a TikTok video hinting at McLeod's presence in El Salvador. These discoveries highlighted her ingenuity and determination, proving that no lead was too small in her quest for justice. On August 28, 2022, after 6 years of relentless searching, the case finally reached a dramatic turning point. Raymond McLeod, once a fugitive blending into the shadows, was tracked down in the small city of Sonsonate, El Salvador. U.S. Marshals, working alongside Salvadoran authorities, had followed a trail of digital footprints and eyewitness reports to his exact location. The once confident fugitive had been living a seemingly quiet life, teaching English to children at a local school. The discovery was both shocking and chilling. A man capable of such horrific violence hiding in plain sight, passing himself off as a trusted educator. The operation to capture McLeod was meticulously planned. Knowing he had been spotted with firearms in the past, authorities approached with caution, prepared for potential resistance. However, McLeod, aware that his time on the run had come to an end, surrendered without a fight. He stepped out of his modest residence with his hands raised, his once imposing figure now gaunt and aged. The years of evading justice had taken a visible toll, yet his arrest was a moment of triumph for the team of law enforcement officials who had worked tirelessly to bring him to justice. News of the arrest spread quickly, reaching Josephine that same day. The lead U.S. Marshal called her personally to deliver the long-awaited news. McLeod had been captured. For Josephine, the moment was bittersweet. It marked the culmination of years of relentless effort, sleepless nights, and unwavering determination. While the capture brought a sense of closure to the hunt, it also reignited the painful memories of what had been lost. "Without you, he would not have been arrested," the marshal told her, a statement that underscored how pivotal her role had been in the pursuit. McLeod's extradition to the United States was swift. Within days, he was escorted back to San Diego, where he would face charges for Krystal's murder. His return was met with a media frenzy, with cameras capturing every moment of his transfer in handcuffs. For Josephine, seeing him back on U.S. soil was a powerful reminder of what her determination had achieved. However, she knew this was not the end of the fight. The legal battle was just beginning, and she was prepared to face it head-on. The capture of McLeod was not only a turning point in the case, but also a testament to the power of persistence and collaboration. It demonstrated the importance of unwavering determination, resourcefulness, and the collective efforts of those seeking justice. For Josephine, it was proof that even the most elusive criminals could not outrun accountability forever. This moment, hard-earned and long overdue, was a victory for Krystal, her family, and every victim who had ever been denied justice. With Raymond McLeod finally in custody, the case moved into its next phase, the long and grueling fight for justice in the courtroom. From the outset, McLeod's defense team sought to craft a narrative that painted Krystal's death as an accident. They argued that the fatal injuries were the result of a consensual act gone wrong, a claim that left Josephine and Krystal's loved ones outraged. This defense not only contradicted the overwhelming evidence, but also felt like an attempt to tarnish Krystal's character, turning the victim into the accused. The prosecution, armed with damning evidence, worked to dismantle McLeod's claims. Key among their exhibits was surveillance footage from the condo's parking lot on the night of the murder. The video showed Krystal falling to the ground, clearly in distress, followed by McLeod aggressively grabbing her by the throat in an elevator. This chilling footage was a powerful piece of evidence, leaving little doubt about the violence she endured in her final moments. For Josephine, watching the footage in court was excruciating, but it reaffirmed her resolve to see McLeod held accountable. Testimonies from McLeod's past partners further strengthened the prosecution's case. Witnesses recounted a disturbing pattern of abuse, including an incident where McLeod attempted to strangle a former wife. These testimonies painted a clear picture of a man with a long history of violence against women. The prosecution argued that Krystal's death was not an isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern of dangerous behavior. This contextualized McLeod as a predator who posed a continuing threat to society. Meanwhile, Josephine attended every court hearing, often sitting in the front row with a photograph of Krystal. For her, the courtroom was not just a legal battleground, it was a place to honor her daughter's memory and ensure that her voice was heard. Reporters covering the trial often highlighted Josephine's presence, describing her as the emotional anchor of the proceedings. Despite the pain of reliving the details of Krystal's murder, Josephine remained steadfast, determined not to let McLeod's defense overshadow the truth. The defense, desperate to shift blame, introduced arguments that Krystal's death resulted from an unconventional sexual act, allegedly requested by her. This narrative was met with swift rebuttals from the prosecution, who pointed out McLeod's history of violent behavior, his immediate flight from the scene, and the overwhelming physical evidence at the crime scene. Additionally, experts testified that the injuries Krystal sustained were consistent with a violent attack, not an accident. For Josephine, this phase of the battle was perhaps the most difficult. She had to endure attempts by the defense to distort her daughter's character and frame the events in ways that felt deeply unfair. Yet her unwavering focus on justice for Krystal kept her going. Outside the courtroom, Josephine continued to raise awareness about the case, using media appearances to draw attention to domestic violence and the need for systemic change in how such cases are handled. As the trial progressed, public interest in the case grew. Advocacy groups and supporters of Josephine rallied outside the courthouse, carrying signs that read "Justice for Krystal" and "End Domestic Violence." Josephine's story resonated with many, becoming a symbol of resilience and the power of love in the face of unimaginable loss. Her public presence reminded everyone that this was not just a legal matter. It was a fight for accountability and for the memory of a woman who deserved far more than the life she was robbed of. The legal battle, though exhausting and emotionally draining, became a platform for Josephine to advocate for victims everywhere. While the prosecution worked to ensure a guilty verdict, Josephine worked to ensure that Krystal's story inspired change. As the trial neared its conclusion, Josephine prepared to take the stand, knowing that her testimony would be one of the most pivotal moments in her pursuit of justice. For Josephine, the stakes were clear. This was not just about holding McLeod accountable for what he had done. It was about ensuring that no other family would have to endure the pain hers had suffered. While Josephine fought for justice, she also worked tirelessly to preserve Krystal's memory for her grandchildren. She ensured they remembered their mother not for the tragedy that befell her, but for the love and strength she embodied. Through photographs, stories, and keepsakes, Josephine kept Krystal's spirit alive in their lives. She became a pillar of strength for her family, transforming her pain into a powerful force for good. Josephine's journey also inspired countless others, turning her personal tragedy into a beacon of hope for victims of domestic violence. Her ability to balance her grief with her advocacy highlighted the depth of her love for her daughter and her determination to make a difference. The arrest of Raymond McLeod marked a significant milestone, but for Josephine Wenzel and her family, the journey to justice was far from over. With McLeod in custody and extradited to San Diego, the focus shifted to the courtroom, where years of effort and pain would culminate in a trial scheduled for January 2025. This was not just a legal battle, it was the final chapter in Josephine's relentless pursuit of accountability for her daughter's murder. For Josephine, this fight was deeply personal, but it also carried a broader significance. She knew this trial was about more than Krystal. It was about justice for all victims of domestic violence and holding perpetrators accountable for their actions. As the trial date approached, Josephine prepared herself mentally and emotionally for what lay ahead. Testifying in court, revisiting the details of her daughter's murder, and facing McLeod directly would be among the most challenging moments of her life. Yet Josephine understood the importance of her role in the process. She had come this far, driven by her love for Krystal and her unshakable belief in justice. Her presence in the courtroom was not only a testament to her determination, but also a symbol of strength for other families who had experienced similar tragedies. The legal proceedings were more than just a test of evidence. They were a test of endurance for all involved. For Josephine, the trial represented the culmination of years of sacrifice. Since the day she received the call about Krystal's death, She had devoted her life to this mission, turning her grief into action. Every sleepless night, every lead followed, and every painful memory relived had led to this moment. The trial would provide an opportunity to finally hold McLeod accountable, but it would also be a chance to honor Krystal's memory in a public and powerful way. Support for Josephine grew as the trial neared. Advocacy groups, friends, and strangers alike rallied around her cause, showing their solidarity with her fight. Outside the courthouse, demonstrations were organized to demand justice, with supporters holding signs that read, "Justice for Krystal" and "Stop Domestic Violence." For many, Josephine's journey was an inspiration, a reminder that determination and love could lead to real change, even in the face of immense adversity. Her story resonated deeply, shedding light on the often overlooked struggles of families affected by domestic violence. Inside the courtroom, Josephine was a constant presence, her strength unwavering despite the emotional toll. She carried with her a framed photograph of Krystal, placing it on the table in front of her as a silent reminder of why she was there. The courtroom proceedings were both exhausting and empowering for Josephine. Every moment was a reminder of the pain her family had endured, but also of the progress they had made in bringing McLeod to justice. As the trial date approached, Josephine remained resolute in her mission. She spoke to media outlets, sharing her story and emphasizing the importance of justice, not just for Krystal, but for every victim whose voice had been silenced by violence. She reminded the world that this case was not only about holding McLeod accountable, but also about sparking change in the way society addresses domestic violence. Her advocacy brought national attention to the issue, creating a platform for broader conversations about prevention, support systems, and the need for systemic reform. For Josephine, the road to justice was more than just a journey. It was a testament to her love for her daughter and her determination to ensure that Krystal's legacy would endure. As she prepared for the trial, she reflected on how far she had come and the strength she had found in her grief. This was not the end of her journey, but it was a significant milestone, a moment that represented both the culmination of her efforts and the beginning of a new chapter in her mission to make a difference. The trial, set for January 2025, was more than just a legal proceeding. It was a chance to finally bring closure to Krystal's story and to ensure that McLeod was held accountable for his actions. For Josephine, it was a moment of vindication, proof that even in the face of unimaginable loss, hope, resilience, and love could prevail. Whatever the outcome, Josephine's journey had already made an indelible impact, reminding the world that justice is not just about punishment. It is about honoring the lives of those we have lost and ensuring a safer future for others. Josephine Wenzel's journey is more than a quest for justice. It is a testament to the power of love and determination. Through years of relentless effort, she transformed her grief into action, becoming a voice for the voiceless and a champion for victims of domestic violence. Her story is a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope and resilience can lead to meaningful change. While the trial will bring closure to Krystal's case, Josephine's advocacy ensures her daughter's memory lives on, inspiring others to stand up against violence and injustice. In the end, Josephine proved that no obstacle is insurmountable when driven by the unyielding bond of a mother's love. This is not just a story of loss. It is a story of courage, justice, and the enduring legacy of a woman who refused to give up. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth true crime stories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Together, we can raise awareness and honor the memory of those we've lost. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. August 22nd, 2005, Stacy made a panicked call to 911, reporting that her husband, David Castor, hadn't shown up for work.
Police Communications, can I help you?
My name is Stacy Castor. My husband has locked himself in our bedroom for the last day.
Has he ever mentioned hurting himself or harming himself?
Well, Friday night when we were arguing, he told me to get out, take my kids and get out. I could leave.
Okay, don't cry. We're going to check on him, make sure he's okay.
According to Stacy, David had gotten upset, taken a bottle of Southern Comfort, and locked himself in the bedroom, refusing to come out. She assumed he had been drinking heavily and was simply sleeping it off. She even told her friend Danny Coleman that when she pressed her ear to the door, she could hear him breathing. When police arrived and forced open the bedroom door, they found David Castor dead from what appeared to be a self-murder. On the nightstand, they discovered 2 glasses, one containing antifreeze. Beneath the bed, they found an open bottle of antifreeze. In the kitchen, a turkey baster with the smell of alcohol was found in the trash, raising suspicions about what had really happened. Stacy told detectives that David had been struggling with depression due to the recent loss of his father and suggested that his heavy drinking and apparent self-murder were connected to his grief. However, those who knew David, including his ex-wife, Janice Poisson-Farmer, did not believe he would take his own life. Detective Dominic Spinelli remained unconvinced by the self-destruction theory and launched a 2-year investigation. He found that David's will left everything to Stacy and her 2 daughters, with nothing going to his own son, David Jr., which raised more questions. Spinelli also noticed similarities between David's death and the sudden passing of Stacy's first husband, Michael Wallace. Further digging revealed that Wallace had no serious health issues, apart from a hernia. With rising suspicions that both men were poisoned with antifreeze, known for its painful and lethal effects, investigators decided to exhume Wallace's body to check for the signature crystals in his organs that were caused by antifreeze poisoning. On September 5, 2007, Michael Wallace's body was exhumed to uncover the truth behind his sudden death. The autopsy results were chilling. Sergeant Michael Norton of the Onondaga County Sheriff's Office recalled the medical examiner telling him that Wallace was loaded with crystals, a clear sign of antifreeze poisoning. Detective Spinelli, who had been investigating the deaths, realized this wasn't just a coincidence. He was convinced that both Michael Wallace and David Castor had been murdered, and Stacy Castor was likely responsible for both deaths. Police ramped up their investigation. They placed surveillance cameras at Stacy's home and at the cemetery where her husbands were buried. They also wiretapped her phone, and through one of these calls, they learned that Stacy had visited the cemetery shortly after Michael Wallace's body had been exhumed. On September 7, 2007, Stacy was brought in for questioning. During the interview, she made a suspicious slip-up. Detective Spinelli asked her which glass she had used to pour cranberry juice for her husband. Stacy responded, "Well, when I poured the anti-free, before quickly correcting herself to say, "I mean the cranberry juice." Spinelli immediately picked up on the mistake, but Stacy became defensive, accusing him of trying to frame her, and abruptly ended the interview. Just days later, on September 12, 2007, a new twist emerged. Ashley Wallace, Stacy's daughter, had just started her first day of college when detectives visited her with devastating news. Her father, Michael Wallace, had been poisoned with antifreeze. Shaken, Ashley called her mother, and police wiretaps captured their conversation. Stacy asked Ashley about what the detectives had told her and then suggested they share a drink to unwind after a tough day. Ashley, trusting her mother, accepted the drink. But something was wrong. Ashley began to feel drowsy and eventually passed out, winding up unconscious in her bedroom. Unknown to her, this was another attempt by Stacy to cover her tracks. On September 13, 2007, Ashley Wallace woke up with a hangover after drinking with her mother the previous night. Despite feeling unwell, she went to school as usual. When she returned home, Stacy Castor suggested they celebrate Ashley's upcoming 21st birthday early by drinking again. Ashley agreed, and her mother prepared another cocktail for her. According to former detective Valerie Brogan, Stacy's plan seemed odd from the start. The drink didn't taste good, and Ashley remembered her mother encouraging her to use a straw and drink quickly, telling her to push the straw to the back of her throat to avoid the bad taste. Ashley followed her mother's instructions, but soon felt overwhelmingly tired and went to lay down. By this point, Stacy Castor was panicking. The police were closing in on her after exhuming Michael Wallace's body and finding antifreeze traces. Desperate to shift the blame, Stacy hatched a plan to frame her own daughter, Ashley, for the murders of both her father, Michael Wallace, and her stepfather, David Castor. Earlier that week, Ashley had been questioned by investigators at her college about her father's death, and they informed her that he had been poisoned. Shocked and upset, she had called her mother, who then invited her over to unwind with drinks. The following day, after their second drinking session, Ashley's younger sister, Bree, found her unconscious in bed. Alarmed, Bree insisted that help be called. Stacy made the 911 call, but before paramedics arrived, a mysterious self-murder note appeared by Ashley's side. The note, supposedly written by Ashley, confessed to the murders of both her father and stepfather. Stacy quickly took the note and handed it to the paramedics, trying to paint the picture of a guilt-ridden daughter. But this attempt to divert suspicion would soon crumble as investigators dug deeper into the case. Tests revealed that Ashley had potentially fatal levels of painkillers in her system. She was dangerously close to death and would have likely died if she hadn't been rushed to the hospital just in time. When Ashley regained consciousness, investigators questioned her about the alleged self-destruction note and her father's murder. Confused, she explained that the last thing she remembered was her mother giving her a drink, a situation that had never happened before. Ashley was adamant that she didn't write the note and had no idea why the police were questioning her about the deaths of her father and stepfather. And finally, after 2 years of building their case, investigators finally arrested Stacy Castor in 2007. She was charged with second-degree murder for the death of her second husband, David Castor, and for attempting to kill and frame her own daughter, Ashley. During the trial, prosecutors argued that the so-called self-murder note, which was supposedly written by Ashley, was actually Stacy's creation. At the time of her father, Michael Wallace's death, Ashley had only been 12 years old. On the witness stand, she firmly denied any involvement in either of the murders and insisted that she had never written the note. Onondaga County District Attorney William Fitzpatrick and his team built a compelling case. They pointed out that David Castor's self-murder never made sense, as his fingerprints weren't found on the glass or the antifreeze container. Further investigation revealed a turkey baster in the kitchen trash, containing traces of ethylene glycol, the toxic substance found in antifreeze, along with David's DNA. Prosecutors argued that this was proof Stacy had force-fed David the antifreeze. To support their case, the prosecutors pointed to the evolution of David's illness, suggesting Stacy had administered the poison over time, using the bastard to make his death appear self-inflicted. She even claimed David had gotten the idea from watching a news report about another woman, Lynn Turner, who had poisoned her lovers using antifreeze. Prosecutors presented strong evidence that antifreeze poisoning could be identified by the growth of calcium oxalate crystals in the kidneys, a key detail that showed up in the autopsies of both Michael Wallace and David Castor. These crystals are a clear sign of antifreeze ingestion, linking both deaths to poisoning. Along with this technical proof, prosecutors pointed to money as a major motive for Stacy Castor's actions. They revealed that she had changed David's will to cut out his son from his inheritance, a move that meant more money for herself and her daughters. Castor was not only after the insurance payouts, but was also trying to secure his estate for her own benefit. Cayuga County Sheriff Dave Gould added that the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place in 2005. He explained that if David Castor hadn't died, or if Michael Wallace had been cremated, the truth about the murders might have never been discovered. The investigation might have never gone as far as it did. In their search of Stacy Castor's computer, prosecutors found multiple drafts of the supposed self-murder note that had been left by her daughter Ashley. The timestamps on these drafts proved that Ashley was in school at the time, making it impossible for her to have written the note. This led investigators to believe that what had been labeled a attempted took his own life was actually a premeditated attempt to murder Ashley and frame her for the deaths of her father and stepfather. Ashley Wallace took the stand, recounting how her mother had convinced her to drink the strange, bitter-tasting drink just before her near-death experience. She explained that she trusted her mother, which was why she drank it, despite how bad it tasted. Ashley maintained her innocence, both in the murders and in writing the self-murder note, firmly denying any involvement in the tragic events. Castor's defense team, attorneys Charles Keller and Todd Smith, focused on creating doubt about her involvement in the murders. Their strategy was to poke holes in Ashley's version of events and suggest that Ashley, who was just 11 years old at the time of her father's death, could have been capable of murder. They tried to argue that Ashley might have had a motive due to Wallace's favoritism toward her younger sister Bree, and they suggested jealousy could have driven her to commit such a terrible act. For David's death, they brought up the troubled relationship between him and Ashley as evidence that the two didn't get along well. Castor's mother even believed that her granddaughter Ashley was guilty of the murders. In a final attempt to convince the jury of her innocence, Castor herself took the stand. During cross-examination, Onondaga County District Attorney grilled Castor, pointing out flaws in her version of events. Castor insisted that it was Ashley who had killed Wallace and David, though she couldn't offer a clear motive other than suggesting that Ashley might have had mental health issues.
Mrs. Castor, in the 3 letters that we have in evidence here that you wrote to Lynn, the last guy, how many times do you recall referring to your daughter Ashley?
Probably a lot.
And how many times in those letters did you tell Lynn that you still love your daughter Ashley?
I don't know.
How about not one single time? Does that sound correct?
Could be.
Could be. Could be that you referred to her very negatively, didn't you?
I'm sure I did.
That's right, because she killed, after all, your 2 husbands, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
She did. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about a list of reasons why Ashley killed. We'll start with Michael Wallace, her own father. If you had to put these on a list for the jury, let's start with reason number 1.
I don't know.
No, I'll overrule. Go ahead.
I can't give you a reason why she would do it.
So if I give you 10 reasons, we're going to start at number 1, and number 1 is I don't know. Did anybody in the year 2000 know Ashley Wallace better than you?
Probably not.
Did anybody in the year 2005 know Ashley Wallace better than you?
Probably not.
And you, as you just said, have been in jail for 16 months for a crime you claim you didn't commit, correct?
That's true.
And your answer to this jury, when I ask you to give them the number 1 reason why Ashley Wallace killed her own father with antifreeze and then stuffed rat poison down his throat, your answer is, I don't know. Correct?
That's correct.
Fitzpatrick was quick to counter, pointing out that Castor had never sought therapy for Ashley, and that Ashley had shown no signs of mental illness. He also asked why, after working for an ambulance company for years, Castor had waited 17 hours to get Ashley help when she was seriously ill. Fitzpatrick noted how Castor had dismissed David's condition, saying he looked okay, even though he was vomiting and struggling to stand. He questioned how any mother who had lost 2 husbands to poisoning would fail to seek medical help for her own daughter in a similar situation. The back and forth between Fitzpatrick and Castor grew heated, with Fitzpatrick raising his voice and even shouting at her. Keller, Castor's attorney, frequently objected, at one point requesting a mistrial due to the intensity of the cross-examination. Prosecutors introduced another critical piece of evidence during the trial: the typing sounds on police wiretaps. These sounds were heard while Castor was talking to a friend on the phone, even though she denied remembering using her computer that day. The prosecution argued that these sounds matched the sound of Castor typing one of several drafts of the self-murder note meant to frame her daughter, Ashley. Ashley had already testified that she had seen her mother working on the computer, which Castor had tried to hide from her.
I got a question for you. Wednesday night and Wednesday afternoon, were you on the computer at any time during that day?
No, I don't think so. I don't remember.
You were asked that question. Then your lawyer asked you like a couple of questions later, do you remember typing that day? And you said, no, absolutely not. How is it that you're certain you weren't typing at the keyboard when you can't even remember whether or not you were at the computer?
Well, if I wasn't at the computer, I couldn't be typing.
Well, you didn't say you weren't at the computer. You said you weren't sure if you were at the computer. How can you be not sure whether or not you were at the computer, but you're certain that you weren't typing? How can that be?
I answered the question he asked me.
I know you answered the question. That's not answering the question I asked you. How can you be sure that you weren't typing, but not sure if you were at the computer? Don't you type when you're at the computer?
Yeah.
You can't operate the computer without doing a little of this stuff, right?
True.
Okay. So yesterday you said, in response to this question, were you at the computer on Wednesday? You said, I really don't know. I can't remember, right?
Yes.
And then he asked you, did you type anything that day? And you said, absolutely not.
Objection, Judge. I didn't ask if you typed anything that day.
District Attorney Fitzpatrick suggested that this was the day Castor wrote the note, which bore her fingerprints but not Ashley's, in an effort to pin the murders on her daughter. He highlighted a key detail. The word antifreeze was written as anti-free in 4 different places within the note, matching the slip of the tongue Castor made during an interview when she said anti-free. Castor had claimed she was simply cutting herself off mid-sentence because she intended to say something else.
I took this picture of one like it out of my folder, and I showed it to Stacy and said I had a question for you. Stacy, regarding these glasses that were on top of the nightstand next to David's bed, you told us earlier that you had gotten David some cranberry juice and some water. By looking at the photo, would you be able to tell me which glass it was that you brought into David? Stacy leaned into the photo, was looking at it, at which time she said, when I poured the antifreeze, the cranberry juice, you're confusing me, you're jumping all over the place. At that point I said, Stacy, I simply asked you one question. I didn't jump all over, it was just one question, if you know which glass it was. At that point, the interview continued.
When she said to you, when I poured the anti-free, are you certain it was anti-free and not anti-freeze with a Z?
It was anti-free, absolutely positive.
Thank you very much, Detective. I have no more questions.
Castor's defense team tried to counter this by bringing in a pharmaceutical expert to challenge the prosecution's argument that Castor had drugged Ashley 17 hours before she was taken to the hospital. However, on February 5, 2009, the jury found Castor guilty of second-degree murder for poisoning her husband, David, and attempted second-degree murder for overdosing Ashley. When the verdict was read, Castor closed her eyes and remained silent. Her lawyer, Charles Keller, announced that they would appeal the decision, including challenging the admission of evidence related to Wallace's death, for which Castor had not been charged. On March 5, 2009, during Stacy Castor's sentencing, prosecutor Christine Garvey made a powerful statement to Judge Fahey, urging him to impose the maximum consecutive sentences due to the extreme severeness of David's death. Garvey described Castor as cold, calculating, and without any emotion for what she had done. She criticized how Castor had partied with friends in her backyard, acting like nothing was wrong, while her daughter Ashley lay comatose in her bedroom. Human life is sacred, Garvey continued, but Stacy Castor places no value on human life, not even her own flesh and blood. To Stacy Castor, human beings are disposable. David's son, who Castor had cheated out of his inheritance, also spoke in court. He begged Judge Fahey to press the harshest punishment on Castor. Judge Fahey, visibly shaken by the case, told Castor that he had never seen a parent try to murder their own child to cover up the crime they had committed. He declared that Castor was in a class all by herself. He sentenced her to the maximum term of 25 years to life for the murder of her husband, David. Additionally, she received another 25 years for attempting to murder Ashley. For forging David's will to exclude his son from the inheritance, Judge Fahey added an extra sentence of 16 months to 4 years in prison.
All right, Ms. Everly, I have your note that the jury's reached a verdict. If you'd stand for a moment. On indictment number 2007-1271-1, the people of the state of New York versus Stacy R. Castor, as to count number 1, murder in the second degree, what is the verdict? Guilty. On count 2, attempted murder in the second degree, what's the verdict? Guilty. And on count 3, offering a false instrument in the first degree, what is the jury's verdict? Guilty. All right. Do you wish the jury poll, Bill? Chuck?
Yes, Judge.
All right. Kelly, go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as stated through your foreperson, we have found the defendant guilty of all 3 counts in the indictment. Juror number 1, is that your verdict? Yes. Juror number 2?
Yes.
Juror number 3? Yes. Juror number 4? Yes. Juror number 5?
Yes.
Juror number 6?
Yes.
Juror number 7?
Yes.
Juror number 8?
Yes.
Juror number 9?
Yes.
Juror number 10?
Yes.
Juror number 11?
Yes.
And juror number 12?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of both parties and myself and the people of Onondaga County, I want to take this opportunity to thank you and you folks who are alternates, your patience too over the last several days when you haven't been able to deliberate. I'm very, very grateful for your patience and your understanding also. Your jury service is over. You're certainly free to go with our thanks. You're free to talk to anybody about the case that you wish, whether it be the lawyers, the press, each other, your families. But I want to thank you really with very sincerely, and I hope stay warm.
Thank you. Like to check. you don't mind.
With her sentencing complete, Castor's fate was sealed, and she was left to face the long years ahead behind bars. The trial lasted for 4 intense weeks, during which Ashley Wallace took the stand to speak about the impact her mother had on her life. With tears in her eyes, Ashley told the judge that she hated her mother for ruining so many people's lives. Yet despite her anger, she still expressed love for the bond they once shared. "I never knew what hate was until now," Ashley confessed.
The biggest question I ask is why? Why did she do these things? I know that's probably never going to be answered. There are so many things that she has ruined. She'll never be able to see Bree graduate. My father will never take me down the aisle. She'll never get to see her grandchildren. All those things she took away from me. She killed 2 people and tried to kill me and blame it on me and blame me for the other deaths. That bothers me so much. I had to pretend for a year that everything was okay, that nothing was bothering me, even though I was worried about the trial and worried whether the jury would believe me. I hate my mother for ruining so many people's lives. I didn't even know why she did it. What gave her the right to play God with people? And I hate her for having me be the one that found my dad, just like her for having Bree found me. I never knew what hate was until now. Even though I do hate her, I still love her at the same time. That bothers me. It's so confusing. How can you hate someone and love them at the same time?
She went on to say that she wished her mother would apologize for everything she had done, especially the lies. "As horrible as it makes me feel, this is goodbye, Mom," Ashley said.
I had all these fears about if the jury hadn't believed me. What if she got out and tried to hurt me again? Or what if she tried to hurt my sister? I didn't kill anyone and I didn't try to kill myself. I would never leave my sister or Matt. I just don't understand how you can say you love someone and in the next breath try to kill them. I wish she had told me what was going on. She was my best friend and she took that all away just because she got scared. Well, I was scared too when I was in the hospital all by myself and I wanted my mom. But she was the one that did this. I just want to sleep one night without thinking about this. I'm not an angry person and I hate being mad at her. I want to forgive her, but I'm not sure if I can. I just hope God can forgive her. She has to listen to me this time. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye, and this will be the last time I get a chance. As horrible as it makes me feel, this is goodbye, Mom. As hard as you tried, I survived, and I will survive because now I'm surrounded by people that love me. I'm going to do good things in this world, despite making me, in every sense of the word, an orphan. Thank you, Judge Fahey, for letting me express my feelings.
The weight of Ashley's words remained in the courtroom, showing the complex emotions that came with being betrayed by someone so close. Ashley's statement made it clear that, despite the pain and betrayal, she had found strength in her survival and in the love and support of others. Prosecutor William Fitzpatrick informed the court that, according to New York sentencing guidelines, Stacey Castor would have to serve more than 51 years before she could be considered for parole. Given her age, that effectively meant she would spend the rest of her life in prison. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, Castor continued to maintain her innocence. In a 2009 interview with Muir, she adamantly declared, "I did not kill Michael Wallace, I did not kill David Castor, and I did not try to kill my daughter, period. And I will never say that I did, ever." Her words, however, did little to change the fact that her crimes had shattered so many lives. Ashley Wallace said that her mother had once been her best friend, but that she had taken all of that away. She expressed that she would have done anything for her mother, but her mother had chosen to try and kill her instead. Stacey Castor, now identified as New York Department of Corrections inmate number 09G0209, was placed in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women in Bedford Hills, New York. Even with credit for time served, her earliest possible release date was June 15, 2055, which was just over a month before her 88th birthday. This date seemed to mark the harsh reality of her crimes and the deep impact she had caused. In April 2009, a 2-hour 2020 special aired on ABC News, which covered Castor's trial. During the media coverage, she was often referred to as the Black Widow, a nickname previously given to Lynn Turner, who was also convicted of poisoning her partners. In the special, Ashley admitted that she still did not understand how her mother, or any mother for that matter, could try to kill her own child. It was a question that had also haunted the public. How could someone so close, so trusted, betray their own child in such a way? Despite the overwhelming evidence, Castor maintained her innocence, stating that she was shocked by the verdict. She claimed that Ashley had brought this situation on herself and suggested that both of them knew what had happened. Nevertheless, she did express some sympathy for her other daughter, Bree, and claimed that some family members still supported her. Bree, like her sister Ashley, had not spoken to Castor after the trial. She acknowledged that although losing her mother was difficult, she was relieved that the verdict had found Castor guilty, as they all knew she was guilty. Ashley, too, expressed that she would have done anything for her mother, but instead, her mother had tried to kill her. ABC interviewed forensic psychiatrist Dr. James Knoll about the case, and he addressed viewers' questions via video on April 23, 2009, and through site comments on April 27, 2009. He pointed out that most self-murder notes tend to focus on themes of remorse, with the writer expressing an inability to go on with life. However, the note that was supposedly written by Ashley focused instead on removing blame from Castor. Knoll noted that this theme appeared 14 times within the note, which led him to believe that Castor would never admit to guilt. He explained that individuals like Castor, who are guilty of such crimes, often follow the code of deny, deny, deny until the very end. Castor's story was adapted into a Lifetime television film titled Poison Love, the Stacey Castor Story. The film, part of the Ripped from the Headlines series, premiered on February 1, 2020. Nia Vardalos portrayed Castor in the film, which retold the chilling events surrounding her crimes. Stacey Castor was found dead in her cell on June 11, 2016. At first, it wasn't clear how she had died, and her death was listed as undetermined. However, the DA's office later confirmed that she had died of a heart attack, with no signs of foul play or ended her own life. She was only 48 years old and had never seen her daughters again after the trial. What would you do if you found out someone you loved tried to harm you? Do you think Ashley will ever find closure after everything she's been through? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys soon. On June 19, 2019, a 911 dispatcher received a call from a church employee reporting a tip about a body discovered in a remote location.
I work at the Rising Church in Old Town, Arvada. I have a person who's reporting a crime that was reported to him firsthand, and there's a vehicle that potentially has a body in it. The person who committed this crime is Frank Moffat.
In the background, a voice could be heard guiding the caller on what to say.
Okay, does he have any further information?
It's definitely not a hoax. It's not my own brother.
Police promptly responded to the call to investigate the report.
She said that there was a man in the church and that he wanted to report a crime. Essentially, the crime was that his brother had killed his girlfriend and placed her into the trunk of a vehicle near his home. As soon as we heard we possibly have a body in our car, we're thinking, we have a homicide. We need to treat this as a homicide.
The call included a serious allegation, naming a suspect who lived near the vehicle. Upon arriving at the provided address, police discovered a white Ford Escort. The vehicle was abandoned, had been unregistered for 2 years, and was filled with trash. When questioned by police, neighbors mentioned they believed the visible limbs inside the abandoned car were part of a mannequin.
Pretty sure. I mean, we both feel confident, and we pray that that's what we saw. Is it that white car?
There was a distinct odor of rotting, of death. Every police officer knows the smell of death. There was a female body in the car. Her head was down near the floorboard. Her feet were almost up on the seat. My initial response is we need to get our CSIs out. We need to get the lab out. We were concerned with the rising temperatures that we would start to lose physical evidence, DNA, off of the body.
The police needed to examine the body hidden beneath the piles of garbage bags.
Upon death, the body continues to change as it decays. So we ultimately sealed the car and then had it towed with the body in it back to the police station.
The pressing question was, how did the body end up in the car? Their only lead was the man named in the 911 call, Frank Moffat, who lived just around the corner from where the car was found. The police decided to move in on him.
Havana PD! Make yourself known, exit the residence with your hands up! Havana PD! Havana PD! Exit the residence!
Frank Moffat was promptly arrested and taken into custody for questioning.
Face the other way. Back up towards me until I tell you to stop.
He basically said that he had nothing to do with the homicide, had no idea how she ended up inside this vehicle that he was using at the time.
The police immediately began searching for evidence in and around Frank's house. They also canvassed the area, searching for any available surveillance footage.
We need to knock on every single door and then get as much footage as we possibly could. Everybody has cameras these days.
There you go, bingo.
There, you got both angles.
Okay, that's perfect.
Meanwhile, the crime scene investigation team began their meticulous work on the white car.
This was not just a female placed in the back of an empty vehicle. The car had a rolled up rug, it had trash bags, it had car batteries. It was packed full of stuff. Each item had to meticulously be taken out of the car. We processed some of the items for DNA. It was a very lengthy, slow process.
Detective Matt Archuleta carefully examined the evidence inside the car, as well as the body, to determine the cause of death.
There was a small trickle of like a bloody substance coming out of one of the eye sockets. And it had a downward shape to it in the sense that it had run down the nose and then dried. Following gravity, that would indicate the head was in an upright position when that drop came out. It was fairly obvious that the death had occurred somewhere else, that the body was put into the car by someone, and then that the body was covered with trash to hide the body.
After removing the body from the car, the police used a fingerprint scanner to identify the victim. The victim was identified as Veronica Serenana. But what happened to her? Who could have possibly wanted her dead? And what clues were found that brought everything to light? Well, stay with us as we unravel the chilling events, the secrets, and the heartbreaking reality behind Veronica Serenana's final days. On June 19, 2019, Veronica Ann Serenana, a devoted mother, daughter, sister, and aunt, was taken from this world at just 38 years old. But who was she beyond this heartbreaking end? And what led to this heartbreaking loss? Veronica's family and friends remember her as a beautiful soul with a contagious smile and a laugh that filled the room. She was passionate about hiking, reading, and yoga, finding peace in nature and joy in simple moments. How could someone so full of life meet such a tragic fate? Born on August 30th, 1980, in Kremling, Colorado, Veronica was deeply loved by those around her. Her children, Emilio and Andrew Gutierrez, and her parents, Pedro and Sadie, mourn her absence every day. She also leaves behind siblings who remember her warmth and kindness, her sparkling eyes that lit up any space she entered. How does a family recover from losing someone so cherished? Despite the love that surrounded her, Veronica's life ended amid a conflict that brought unimaginable sorrow to all who knew her. Was this tragedy preventable? And how did the feud between two brothers lead to a loss that no family should have to endure? So, one of the two brothers, Christopher Moffat, was in a relationship with Veronica Serenana, a bond that should have been safe and full of trust. But for Veronica, it was anything but safe. For 4 turbulent years, their relationship swung between brief moments of calm and terrifying bursts of violence. How could something that seemed like love become so twisted? Christopher viewed their relationship as a beautiful love story, but was it really? For Veronica, it was far from a storybook romance. The good times were always overshadowed by Chris's brutal outbursts, turning their lives into a nightmare cycle of control and fear. In January 2019, only 5 months before Veronica's tragic end, police were called in after one of Chris's violent attacks. He'd been arrested for assaulting her, but Veronica's story went beyond just one incident. She told investigators that he'd hurt her more than 100 times throughout their relationship. Can you imagine the pain and fear she lived with daily? The most horrifying part? Krys had a common method of hurting her. He would pin her down, cover her mouth and nose with his hand, and leave her unable to breathe. This wasn't just a moment of rage, it was a pattern of terrifying control. The first time he strangled her, she lost consciousness, and yet she found herself caught in a cycle, unable to break free. Despite the serious nature of the charges, something unexpected happened. In January, Krys was arrested, but by April, the assault charge was dismissed. Why was this charge dismissed? And what did this mean for Veronica? Without the weight of those charges, Krys walked free. But his anger hadn't faded. Just a day after his release, he assaulted her again. This time, he pled guilty to felony assault, receiving a sentence of 3 years probation. It was then that Veronica was granted a protection order, a fragile barrier between her and the man who continued to haunt her life. But even a protection order couldn't keep him away. Krys soon found himself back in jail, this time for a drug charge. But when he was released on June 12th, he reached out to Veronica again, ignoring the protection order entirely. He had nowhere else to go, and somehow Veronica, compassionate as she was, didn't turn him away. She chose to help him, despite everything, despite the warnings, and despite the protection order. What would make her do this? Veronica booked a series of hotel rooms for Krys around Denver, allowing him a place to stay even as her own safety was compromised. It's chilling to think about, isn't it? Here was a woman who, despite all that she'd endured, showed kindness to the man who'd caused her such fear and pain. But Veronica's generosity, sadly, came at a terrible cost. On June 17th, hotel security footage captured Veronica alive for one of the last times. She was seen paying for Krys's room while he passed by dressed in a white-collared shirt and a gray t-shirt that bore the unsettling words, "Serial Tillers," on the back. The very next day, June 18th, Veronica went to visit Krys again. This time, they planned a casual outing. They picked up Chinese food and a 6-pack of beer, hoping for a quiet picnic by scenic Lake Dillon. But this outing wasn't the lighthearted escape it seemed. Instead, a dark cloud was already looming over them, even if Veronica hadn't fully realized it yet. In Krys's mind, paranoia and jealousy were brewing. He had a suspicion, a devastating suspicion, that Veronica and his brother had been together while he was in jail. This idea hurt and angered him deeply, feeding his resentment. He wanted Veronica all to himself, with no one else in her life. And on that day, he tried to persuade her to leave it all behind, to run away with him and start fresh somewhere far away. But Veronica had already given him so many chances. She wasn't willing to throw everything away and run. And that refusal was enough to make Krys snap. His temper flared, and once again, he lost control. But this time, the consequences were irreversible. In a fit of rage, Krys strangled Veronica. By the time he came to his senses, it was too late. Veronica Serenana, a loving mother and a kind-hearted woman, would never take another breath. The medical examiner later confirmed that she died from manual strangulation. Veronica was only 38 years old when she lost her life. She left behind 2 young sons, children who would now have to grow up without their mother. What would her sons remember of her? Would they remember the love she gave, or would the shadow of her tragic death haunt them forever? It's impossible to fully grasp the heartbreak and suffering Veronica must have endured, not just in her final moments, but throughout the years of her relationship with Krys. What drove her to keep helping him, despite the danger he posed? Why wasn't the justice system able to protect her, even with the protection order in place? Now Krys knew he was in deeper trouble than he had ever been in before. But instead of facing up to what he'd done, he began forming a desperate, almost reckless plan. And what did he come up with? Well, in his mind, he could escape the consequences if he could just convince the police that someone else was responsible. And the person he chose? His own brother, Frank Moffat, who went by Kelly. But why would Chris do this? Well, according to him, Kelly had bullied him for years, ever since they were kids. He painted a picture of constant fighting and bad blood. Chris later told detectives that Kelly had always been the bad guy in his life, often beating him up and picking on him. But what he didn't tell them was his true motive. He wanted revenge. This frame-up was his chance to finally get even, to settle some old scores with Kelly and punish him for what he felt was a recent betrayal involving Veronica. Chris then spun a story for the detectives, a story he hoped would make them believe Kelly was the real culprit. He claimed that on the night of June 18th, he'd dropped Veronica off at Kelly's place around midnight. He said he knew that she'd chosen to be with Kelly, and he claimed he was fine with it, even though it stung. According to his story, he reluctantly accepted her decision. But was that true? Nope. To make things even more convincing, text messages were sent from Veronica's phone to Kelly's that night. The police later hinted that Chris himself may have sent those texts to make it look like Veronica had plans with Kelly. Around 1:30 a.m. on June 19th, a security camera recorded Chris walking near Kelly's house. But here's the question. Why was he there, alone, in the middle of the night? And where was Veronica? Kelly lived in Arvada, a quiet suburb about 12 miles from Denver. In the early hours of that morning, Chris decided to return to Kelly's home. But why go back? What was he planning to do? This time, he was there to plant more evidence. Security footage shows Chris placing Veronica's purse on the dog gate right by Kelly's front door. Kelly and his housemates found the purse the next morning. Imagine their surprise. Veronica's purse was just sitting there, but they didn't know that something far more disturbing was close by. What they couldn't see was that Veronica's body was actually hidden in Kelly's old, beat-up car parked nearby, a car already loaded with trash. They had no idea this simple purse was part of a much larger setup. And what did Chris do next? To take his scheme a step further, he made an anonymous 911 call claiming there had been some suspicious activity and a possible disturbance at Kelly's house the night before. But he wasn't done yet. Just 20 minutes after that, another call came in to 911. This time it was from a church nearby, where an employee reported that a man matching Chris's description had walked in and started making shocking claims. He told them that his brother Kelly had killed his girlfriend and that her body was hidden in Kelly's car. The police took these calls seriously. They quickly descended on Kelly's house, determined to find this vehicle and the evidence inside. What did they find? A white Ford Escort parked not too far from Kelly's house, and in the back seat, hidden under garbage bags and a rolled-up carpet, they found Veronica's body. Now, why would Kelly have loaded this car with trash? Kelly later told police he had filled the car with garbage because he knew it was about to be towed. This detail alone added to the mystery. Could Chris have known this and used it to his advantage? Was it part of his calculated plan to pin everything on Kelly? Armed with the damning calls and the horrifying scene they just uncovered, police moved in to arrest Kelly. This wasn't a simple knock on the door. Given the severity of the accusations and the corpse in his car, they treated him as a dangerous suspect. First, officers used flashbang grenades to get his attention, making sure he knew they were serious. They then commanded him, loudly and forcefully, to come out of the house. Kelly was arrested, and for a while it seemed like Chris's story might hold up. But could he really get away with something this twisted? How long could his web of lies last? Well, while Chris's brother was getting questioned by the police for a murder he didn't commit, Chris himself was far from sitting still. Instead, he used this time to lay out more of his plan, making it look like his brother was the one responsible. But how exactly did he try to pull this off? And just how far was he willing to go to make it look like he was innocent? Chris got to work on building his alibi and creating a smokescreen to divert attention away from himself. He drove around to different places, libraries, public spots, even a casino, leaving messages for Veronica, who by then was already dead. What was he saying in these messages? He sent emails pretending to beg her to run away with him. Why? Because he wanted to give the impression that he thought she was still alive, as if she might just be off hiding somewhere. Adding another layer to his story, Chris didn't own a phone. This forced him to stop at various places to make calls, using different public phones to contact people, always from somewhere new. He even explained his movements to the police when they interviewed him, detailing where he'd been and what he'd done. But this was all just a performance to make himself look innocent. Then detectives uncovered a voicemail Chris had left for Veronica, another piece in his tangled web of deception. In this voicemail, he painted a picture that he still cared for her, as if he was genuinely concerned about her whereabouts. But with Veronica's death confirmed, these voicemails only deepened the mystery. Why go to all this trouble if he had nothing to hide? When asked why he was driving Veronica's car, Chris came up with another story, claiming that she felt guilty for supposedly betraying him by getting close to his brother. According to him, she wanted to make things right, so she handed her car over to him so he could leave town. But his story didn't add up. If he planned to leave on his own, why did he need her car? And if Veronica wasn't going with him, what was the point? Chris then told police he had agreed to pay Veronica $2,000 for the car. He said that when he had the money, he'd send it to her and she'd mail him the car's title. But this didn't quite make sense either. Why would someone who intended to stay close to someone they supposedly loved prepare to leave town with their car? Pressed to explain further, Chris claimed he'd last seen Veronica when he drove her to his brother's house late one night, dropping her off around midnight. After that, he said he drove out to the mouth of Black Rock Canyon, where he slept in the car. But what was he doing there alone? And why didn't Veronica go with him? Something didn't feel right. Then detectives hit him with the real news. Veronica was the victim of a murder investigation. Chris's reaction was to fake surprise. His story continued to unravel as detectives dug deeper into his whereabouts and actions. A massive hole in Chris's plan came to light through security footage that showed him around his brother Kelly's house on the night Veronica died. Chris had insisted he'd left Veronica at Kelly's house that evening, but the cameras showed otherwise. Kelly was inside his house all night and didn't leave, meaning he couldn't have been involved in any crime outside. Not only that, but Veronica was nowhere to be seen in the footage. The implication was clear. Chris's story didn't match up with reality. But why would he try so hard to frame his own brother? Kelly, now fully aware of Chris's intentions, told detectives that he believed Chris was trying to set him up. He suspected it was all because of Veronica and the complicated relationships between the three of them. Kelly even admitted to having been with Veronica once in April, adding another layer to the twisted triangle. But when he proved he had a solid alibi for the night in question, police were quick to clear him. This left Chris as the prime suspect. It wasn't exactly a leap given his history. There were multiple domestic violence charges on his record, all involving Veronica. He tried to present himself as trustworthy and honest with the detectives, but with so much stacking up against him, the detectives weren't buying it. On June 19th, the same day Veronica's body was discovered, police tracked Chris down in Glenwood Springs. He was sitting in Veronica's car, parked in a Walmart parking lot. This was a red flag in itself. Veronica was already missing, yet he had her vehicle. Police arrested him for violating a restraining order and booked him into the Garfield County Jail. Here, 2 detectives from the Arvada Police Department paid him a visit early the next morning, eager to ask him about the final hours he'd spent with Veronica. The topic of his brother Kelly came up repeatedly in their conversation. As the detectives questioned him, Chris repeatedly denied having anything to do with Veronica's death. But his explanations were flimsy at best. He even went so far as to label her as a stalker, claiming she had been obsessed with him. Why would he suddenly turn the story around like this? The truth is, Chris's stories had more holes than solid ground, and the detectives could see through them. Despite his insistence that he was innocent, everything, from the security footage to his inconsistent statements, pointed in one direction. It all came back to him, to the tangled mess he'd created to cover his tracks. As the detectives gathered more evidence, it became clear that this was not a case of a simple misunderstanding or a tragic accident. It was far more complex, layered with deception, manipulation, and betrayal. With each step Chris took to try to cover his tracks, he only made it easier for the truth to come to light. And in the end, his actions told the story louder than his words ever could. So was it worth it? Did Chris think he could actually get away with it? These are the questions that linger, casting a dark shadow over the tragic story of Veronica Serenana's final days. Now, Chris Moffat, then 36, told investigators that the tension with his older brother Kelly wasn't new. It had been simmering for years, even decades. In fact, the hostility went back to their childhood, long before Veronica Serenana, the woman Chris was eventually convicted of killing, entered the picture. This bad blood between the brothers set the stage for a tragic outcome. But how did it get to the point of murder? After Chris was arrested and in jail, something unexpected happened. His younger brother Kenny arranged a video visit. Imagine Chris's surprise. He hadn't even checked the visitor log and had no idea his little brother wanted to see him. Despite the bitterness he harbored toward Kelly, the tension with Kenny was clearly different. Chris seemed genuinely moved to see his younger sibling, thrilled by the effort Kenny made to reach out while he was behind bars. During their conversation, Chris didn't dive into the details of his case. He told Kenny he couldn't talk about it because it was still unresolved. Kenny seemed to understand, not pressing him for information. Instead, they focused on other things, including one of Chris's deepest concerns, his young daughter from a previous relationship. Chris begged Kenny to stay involved in her life, urging him to make sure she didn't lose her connection to the Moffat family. It was a rare moment of vulnerability, and Kenny reassured his brother, promising to do whatever he could to help. But what does this tell us about Chris's mindset? Was he already facing the reality that he might not be around to raise his daughter? The brothers began regular video calls, giving glimpses into Chris's life in jail. But what is life really like for someone facing such serious charges? For Chris, it was a daily reminder of the decisions he had made as he lived out his days in confinement, speaking with Kenny through a screen. Then, the day before Thanksgiving, Chris had another emotional interaction. His father joined in on a video call with him and Kenny. In a moment that pulled at the heartstrings, father and son reconnected, sharing a bittersweet holiday visit. For Chris, it was a chance to feel connected to his family, despite the charges hanging over him. But did this reunion bring any peace, or did it only deepen the sense of loss and regret? Chris's plan to frame his older brother Kelly was ultimately unsuccessful. Investigators found holes in his story, and the evidence didn't line up with his accusations. Security cameras contradicted his account, and lab results sealed his fate. DNA evidence found on Veronica's body, specifically on her hands and neck, matched Chris, not Kelly. Meanwhile, Kelly's DNA was nowhere to be found. The truth of what happened to Veronica started to come into focus, and Chris's attempt to deflect responsibility was exposed. But what was going through his mind as this evidence piled up against him? Did he believe he could actually get away with blaming his brother? The autopsy report further confirmed the tragedy of Veronica's final moments. It revealed that she had suffered extensive bruising and abrasions on her lips, eyes, throat, neck, and shoulders. The cause of death was determined to be manual strangulation, a brutal and personal act that left no doubt about the violence involved. For investigators, this reinforced the picture of a troubled relationship, marked by abuse and escalating hostility. In 2021, Chris finally admitted his guilt. He entered a plea deal, pleading guilty to second-degree murder and accepting the charges against him. This agreement allowed him to avoid a first-degree murder conviction and an additional charge of tampering with physical evidence. Yet it still led to a significant sentence. Jefferson County Judge Diego Hunt handed down a 40-year prison sentence for the murder, with an additional 15 years for tampering with a deceased human body. Chris also faced 8 years of parole once his sentence is completed. But was this justice served, or could there have been a different way forward? The story of Chris Moffat is a disturbing look into how unresolved family conflicts can spiral into tragedy. It's a case that raises so many questions. What could have been done to prevent this? How did the dynamics within the Moffat family set Chris on this path? And what are the lasting impacts on those left behind? Veronica Serenana's memory serves as a grim reminder of the dangers of domestic violence and the lives it can claim. For her family and friends, justice may have been served, but it can never replace the loss they endured. Meanwhile, the Moffat family is left with fractured ties and painful memories. The case forces us to confront the darker aspects of human nature and the irreversible consequences of choices made in anger and resentment. Now, how do you feel about the justice served in this case? Let us know in the comments below, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more. On April 7th, 2018, a frantic Keith Johansson called 911, claiming his wife, Brandi, had shot herself.
Driver County 911, where's your emergency?
Yes, may I have an officer over at 23 Felter Lane?
23 what?
Felter Lane.
F-E-L-T-E-R?
Yes.
Okay, what's going on, man?
I was in the shower. I heard gunshots, and I think my wife shot her.
Emergency responders discovered Brandi's lifeless body in the master bedroom, just feet away from her son, who was watching television in another room. She had been shot twice in the chest with a 9mm handgun, a detail that immediately raised questions. Could a self-inflicted gunshot wound involve 2 bullets?
Cool, man. All right, relax, man, relax. So you got in the shower. How long were you in the shower, what you said?
Maybe 5 minutes.
5 minutes, all right.
And I heard boom, boom, but I thought it was a balloon.
How many shots did you hear?
2.
You heard 2?
And I thought it was a balloon at first. Then I heard this secondary shot. And I ran out there and seen her laying there going, so I called you guys immediately.
Johansson's accounts to authorities were riddled with inconsistencies. Initially, he claimed Brandi had been handling the gun carelessly. Later, he suggested she might have been deeply distressed. Over time, his stories became increasingly bizarre, hinting at an unknown shooter or even implicating Brandi's young son.
How am I going to tell her, Mom?
All right, hey, listen. At this point, just listen. You're just going through a traumatic experience right now. Just relax, deep breaths. Try to just collect your thoughts, all right? Listen, this is not something that you're going to be able to do like that, okay? Right. So just
I don't want nobody in my family to ever have a gun again.
Okay, Keith, you're just, right now you need to try as hard as you can.
Nobody can say.
I know, but...
Keith's emotions appeared to convince friends and family of his sincerity, but officers and detectives remained skeptical. Deputies at the scene noted the absence of water on his person and the presence of defensive scratches on his torso, injuries that suggested a possible struggle.
A lot of scratches? Yeah.
He's not wet.
No.
So he was in the shower?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing that thing is the shower is underneath his shirt.
Under her shirt?
Underneath his shirt.
Where?
The casing.
Like right at the foot of the bed to the right?
Dude, he's got scratches and blood all over him. And he said that he was in the shower. He's not wet at all.
As investigators delved deeper, Johansson's story began to crumble. Surveillance cameras in the home captured his interactions with Brandi the night before her death. The footage revealed hours of relentless verbal abuse, with Johansson demeaning and threatening Brandi as she sat on the bed, sobbing uncontrollably.
It's only a matter of time. You so much. You threatened to kill yourself. You're going to spend the rest of your days in an institution. I could throw you there tomorrow. You did? No problem. You push a person to either beat or kill you because you're... Well, 911. Get me out of here. Or you ain't waking up. I want to just hurt you and be safe. God knows you deserve it. Jackie needs it. Gave you too many god chances, man. Too many. Show a cop these videos. I don't give a... I'd rather be in prison.
In a calculated act, Johansson had removed the bedroom camera just 2 days before the shooting, a detail that raised further suspicions about his intentions.
What usually happens?
I don't even know. These aren't usual occurrences, so I'm sure they don't want to be standing out in the rain and in the sun. It looks like it's about to downpour.
I mean, like, do you have heuristics that help you?
Oh, I'm sure they have a whole list of... They get paid a lot more than I get paid to know how to handle these situations.
Because I don't know if I'm going to be all right.
Keith was brought to the station for questioning, and what he revealed during his interview shed light on the true state of the newlyweds' troubled relationship. Without the home CCTV footage, Keith's account of events might have been convincing enough to sway a jury into believing it was a tragic accident. However, the motive behind his actions became unmistakably clear.
And then about 3 minutes later, I heard pop. You know, and I was like, what the heck? You know what I mean? So I just thought, then I heard a pop, pop. You know, just, you know, that's how it went. Pop, pop. And I was like, something's wrong. Went out, slipped across the floor, was looking around. I didn't see her at first. And then I was like, what the heck, man? And I looked over and she was laying right there. Like this. And I was like, Brandi, Brandi. And at that point, there was no blood or nothing. I was like, Brandi, Brandi. And then I looked out and seen the guns, and I immediately called 911. I mean, immediately.
The first glaring inconsistency in Keith's story emerged during his 911 call. He told dispatchers he couldn't apply pressure to save his wife's life because he was wet and sliding around the house. However, home CCTV footage revealed a starkly different reality. Keith was seen frantically running around the house, hiding narcotics. He even pretended to speak to his wife over the phone with dispatchers, though he wasn't in the same room. Instead of helping her, he let Brandi bleed out and die alone.
Oh, are you applying pressure to that wound?
No, I can't reach her like that. I'm wet. I'm sliding on my floors.
You can't apply pressure.
I can't see it. Listen, I got wood floors and I'm sliding. I don't want to risk hurting her or possibly one of the guns going off too.
Okay, but you can't reach down to her and apply pressure on the gunshot wound.
No, I can't see it. No, I can't.
Okay.
There's too much stuff right here.
What stuff like?
Moves in.
Okay, I understand that. But there's no way for you to apply. What I'm trying to do is to see if there's any way to apply pressure to keep that wound from bleeding out.
I don't see no blood on the floor. I just see blood on her shirt.
When questioned about their relationship, Keith painted a picture of happiness and open communication. He claimed Brandi had confessed to an online affair, but insisted it was no big deal. In reality, the revelation had enraged him. Keith's anger boiled over to the point where he demeaned Brandi and threatened to kill her multiple times the night before her tragic death.
For the most part, yeah. She had this online thing, you know what I mean, that she admitted to. You know, I've been flirting online, but whoopee. Who cares? You didn't do nothing physically.
Right. When did that happen?
Last week, I'll say. Last week. You know, and I was like, okay, so, and I guess she had said that all of her life she had had that problem and she was addicted and she was going to see if she could see help.
Sure.
Which ain't a big deal to me. I mean, you know,
right.
It's not like I'm going to meet up with somebody, you know.
Yeah, sure.
So that's about it with that. But our relationship-wise, awesome. Awesome relationship. We can talk to each other, which is very rare.
Yeah, that is rare. What did she tell you about this online thing? How was she speaking to someone else?
I don't know.
Do you know, like, was it on Facebook? Was she on a dating site?
I don't know if it was a guy or girl, or I don't know.
Why would you say guy or girl? Is she interested in women? Or?
She used to be in the past, that's why I said that.
Okay.
So I don't know, you know, which one, what was said, how was said, nothing.
How did you find out? I'm sorry. No, that's okay. You didn't want to know? I think if it was me, I would want to know.
The autopsy and blood spatter analysis revealed crucial details. Brandi had suffered one gunshot wound at close range and another from a distance. This finding made it highly improbable for the injuries to be self-inflicted. It suggested that the shooter fired from across the room before delivering a final shot at close range. The medical examiner concluded that Brandi had severe internal bleeding from lacerations to her heart, leaving no doubt that her assailant intended not to harm, but to kill. Brandi, who weighed just 90 pounds, had been systematically stripped of her independence. Keith Johansson had forced her to quit her job, isolating her from friends and family. Their home was filled with surveillance cameras, even in private spaces like the bathroom, allowing Keith to monitor her every move. What once appeared as a tragic accident now unveiled the dark reality of control and calculated violence.
Are there any security cameras installed in your bedroom?
Not in the bedroom, no.
Not in the bedroom.
And the rest of them don't work, they're offline because the batteries are off.
hypothetically speak, did they record audio and video?
Some of them do, some of them don't.
Okay.
And we had just had them up.
When did those get installed?
We installed them ourselves.
Okay, you guys installed
We
them?
just did it, I don't know, a couple days ago.
Where were the cameras installed exactly?
One in the front, one in the back, one on the side. And this side's not, I haven't got one yet for that side.
Okay. You told somebody, what service are you using? Is it cloud-based or what?
I'm not even sure. They're so new. I believe.
Who are you paying? You paid somebody?
No.
So you don't pay any, who'd you buy the cameras from?
Walmart.
Walmart. Do you know what brand they were?
R something?
Okay. And they were all like in the same package? And do you pay a subscription?
Two are wired and one wired.
Did you pay a subscription every month?
Yes.
Okay. And the prescription, I'm sorry.
It's a one-time kind of thing.
One-time thing, and they get uploaded to a cloud, or they're in a hard drive?
I guess.
Okay. So there's no like hard drive somewhere?
No.
Nothing. Okay. How do you work those cameras?
Usually through a cell phone.
Okay. And you had like an app on your phone or something like that?
Yes. But we just got new phones.
Keith had an excuse for every reason he couldn't provide investigators with the video surveillance footage. But detectives quickly saw through his lies. His evasiveness was a stark contrast to the behavior of an innocent person, who would typically have no hesitation in providing evidence to clear their name once suspicion arose. Keith's deception only deepened the investigators' doubts about his innocence.
And you and your wife, I imagine, are the ones that know the password for that?
Sure.
Okay.
So in your extensive gun career...
I don't know about extensive, but...
Well, I mean, you're more familiar than she is. How often does it happen that somebody accidentally shoots themselves twice?
I don't know if she was shot once or twice. I don't know.
Well, you said it went off twice.
Yes. I don't know. I don't know. If she dropped the other one, it happens.
Sure.
I've never heard of it being like that unless you drop it.
Right. Heard of it being like what? I'm sorry.
Like AMS fire.
We need to have a little bit of a harder conversation.
Okay.
Because as much as I want to believe that the guns fell and went off and shot her, what we have at the scene just doesn't show that. So I want to keep our relationship open and honest, and I want to be able to respect you, and I want to be able to preserve the love that you have for Brandi, and I also want to give Brandi the justice that she deserves, and I think we need to have a harder conversation.
Go for it.
Is there any chance at all that something different happened that you have not told us?
None. Because that's what happened. I got no reason to lie, you guys. I mean, you guys are investigators, for God's sake. That's what I seen, and that's what I heard.
Well, I mean, you said you have no reason to lie. I mean, I'm not saying that you're flat out lying to us. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Okay.
What I am saying is that what we have at the scene does not add up to what you're telling us. I want to believe you. I do. And I want to keep this relationship going that we have so that it's not difficult for you. I don't want to add to the trauma that you've already gone through. I really
It's
don't.
all going to be difficult.
Well, yes, but you can make it easier for yourself. We cannot.
Sure.
If after we leave out of this room today, I'm able to say that I feel comfortable with everything that we've talked about, you'll never have to see me again.
Okay.
And at this point, I don't feel comfortable with that.
That's fine. You can investigate as much as you want.
And we're going to.
It's fine.
But this is your opportunity to help yourself and to lay it all out for us. Because there's a backstory. This isn't the story.
This is the story. And I'll get a lawyer and I will prove that this is the real story.
Okay. And you are completely entitled to that.
Ask Rylan. I mean, that's all that happened.
We did ask him.
Okay.
And you know what he told us? Do you want to know?
Yeah, because I wasn't up. So.
He told us that he heard his mom scream.
I heard no screams at all. None.
Why would he make that up?
Ask him.
Is he a liar?
He has been known to tell fibs, yes.
Does he tell you on the regular that his mom screams in the bedroom?
No.
Has he ever told you that his mom screams and it was a lie?
No, not screaming, but he lies about a bunch of other different things. You can ask his real father, and he'll tell you that too.
So why on this date would he lie about his mom screaming in the bedroom?
Investigators began to apply pressure. Keith's body language noticeably shifted. His confident demeanor gave way to visible discomfort, and his tone grew more hesitant, lacking the elaborate storytelling he had displayed earlier. Detectives employed the classic good cop, bad cop tactic, probing for cracks in his composure. The shift in Keith's behavior was telling, as the mounting pressure began to chip away at his facade.
You guys can try to pin whatever you want on me. She didn't scream.
Listen, dude, nobody's trying to pin anything on you.
I'm just telling you what I heard, man. That's it. What I heard, what I seen. I mean, if you're trying to pin something on me, why would I have called 911?
You have a conscience. That's why. You love your wife. That's why.
So why would...
Shit happens in the heat of the moment. You're not a bad person. You're not a fucking monster.
No. I would never do anything like that.
Accidents happen.
I feel kind of offended.
I feel offended too, if we're gonna go to that level.
I feel really offended that you guys can try to pin an accident on me.
No.
Oh, I thought that's what you were getting at with it. I was
Not
like,
at all. If an accident happened, we are more than willing to listen to that. But what I'm telling you is what you're conveying as the accident that happened isn't the accident that happened. If something else happened that was accidental, we could lay that out and I would be happy to listen to it. I am not saying that you're a murderer. I am not saying that you're a bad person, but what I am saying is with my training, my experience, and the crime scene, the accident that you're laying out isn't the one that happened.
well, that's what I seen. When I came up, that's what I seen.
No, it's hard.
It's very hard.
I know it is. Okay.
And I can't tell you something that I don't know. I'm not gonna make up stuff. I just can't. Well, you can test me for gunpowder, go ahead. I don't care. Do whatever test you need. I do not have nothing that I haven't told you. I haven't stepped out of my box and told you stuff. And that took a lot.
In October 2021, Keith Johansson was found guilty of first-degree murder. It took the jury less than 3 hours to reach a verdict. Key to their decision was Keith's repeated inconsistencies, including his shocking suggestion that Brandi's 6-year-old son might have been responsible. The judge handed down a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring Keith would face the full consequences of his actions.